So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, we'll start with Norm. Norm's muted, by the way. Norm, you're muted.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. In addition, Town Administrator Dan Knappich is present. Kyle Pedicini is with me in master control, doing the usual great job that he does. Who else do we have with us, Kyle? Anyone else at this point?
Yeah, we have various town staff who will be present throughout the meeting.
All right. The meeting is now open. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people who may gather in one place. This meeting of the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings as provided for in the governor's order. Persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting or live via the town's YouTube channel. We will also post a recording of this meeting on the Town of Yarmouth website as soon as we're able to do so. Please be patient as we work to overcome any technological challenges with this virtual meeting. To reduce confusion during the meeting, all participants of the virtual meeting are muted by the host, who is Kyle. As participants are called upon to speak, they will be unmuted. Members of the public attending or viewing this meeting virtually will be able to use the raise hand button to identify themselves to the chair when called upon. The host will then unmute your audio. If you are dialed into the phone number provided, you can press *9 on your phone to indicate that you would like to speak. Please wait for the chairman to recognize you before speaking. In addition, public comment may be submitted via email to publiccomment@yarmouth.ma.us. This account will be monitored during the meeting by the host and provided to the chairman as may be applicable. If you are called upon to speak during the meeting, please consider the following guidelines. Do not use speakerphones, do not use Bluetooth devices, mute all background noises, clearly state your name each and every time prior to speaking. All votes must be by roll call. After a motion is made and there is a second, the chair will take the roll call vote. All motions, decisions, documents, and letters will be verbally read into the record to the extent feasible and practicable. If it appears the meeting cannot or should not proceed, then the host will recommend that the chair request to continue the hearing to a later date and time, or until the public meeting can resume normally. We'll now begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. We ask everyone to participate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item is public comment. Before we take public comment, we did get one email that came through on the public comment email address. It's from Robert Ciavarra, Ciavarra, dated today, 4:22 p.m. As you know, I have been an advocate to offer the townspeople an opportunity to defer the CPA tax to help reduce the financial stress the COVID-19 virus has put on taxpayers. It is also not a wise time to continue spending taxpayers' dollars on infrastructure that generates no tax revenue, and in fact usually comes with additional expense for the town. The above being said, is there a legal motion that can be made to amend the CPA article such as follows? Quote, motion to amend. The selectmen shall immediately take action to defer collections of the CPA tax for a period of 3 years. Close quote. The second issue I hope the selectmen address is the overlay fund with the assessor's office. Any money we can get released permanently can be used to offset the social services we are potentially cutting and to not max out the levy limit. I have a hard time balancing our town budget by raising taxes, any amount, during this economic crisis. Thank you for considering the above in your discussions. So do we have anybody else on, Kyle?
Yep, we have Joe Glenn. You are allowed to talk.
All right, let's take Joe Glenn. Joe, can you hear me?
I can, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Very, very well, Joe.
I was having trouble. I don't know if Kyle or whoever, I texted Selectman Forrest, and he had me try again, but I wasn't seeing it on YouTube. I finally did see it on YouTube, and I finally got up, but it wasn't working in the beginning, so you might want to give some more time for some other people to keep trying. I wanted to get to the question, because I have a feeling that we're picking winners and losers in regards to restaurants or any activities in the town. Our indoor restaurants that don't have any possibility of any outside capabilities, or they don't want to invest because it's just not practical for them or safe, or whatever the reason is. But you know, I had asked previously, and I had commended you guys for staying the course. Standing. Did I lose you guys?
No,
Did I lose you,
no,
Mike?
I can hear you, Joe.
I'm not here. I'm not hearing you, but can you hear me, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not hearing you. So I'll just continue. I'm not hearing you, but I can continue.
Good decision.
Thanks, Tracy. I got the message. I lost my train of thought, but I think we're picking the winners and losers. I've commended you guys in the past for staying the course. We've already established what the state can't do. We know that there has to be some relationship to infection, and they can't prove that. There's no evidence. And so when we don't open things up and we don't allow our business, we put these restrictions on, we're picking winners and losers, and the state has no authority. You guys are the authority. We've already been through that road. You've made the decisions, whether it was on beach parking or the length of blankets or whatever. You have made that clear. So my point is that we can say to the whole world and to the state, Yarmouth is the place to come. We're open for business, and we don't believe that these restrictions are law. there's no public health demonstration, and there's no way that the state can enforce it or make you use town resources to enforce it. So it's all up to you guys as the selectmen, and you've done it already. You've done it on the boardwalk conversation. You've done it on the other beach conversation. So I'm sorry for losing my train of thought. I don't know what happened. So I'm going to have to try to find another way to hear you guys. But, like I said previously, stay the course and keep up the good work, but don't leave us now. You guys have made statements in the past, and the townspeople are with you on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joe. Anyone else, Kyle?
Yeah, Bill, you are now permitted to talk.
Hello, Chair Board there, Select Board, I'm sorry. My name is Bill Campbell. I'm a resident of 25 Sierra Way and a business owner in South Yarmouth. How are you all doing tonight?
Good, how you doing, Bill?
I'm doing well. I want to thank you in advance. I'm a little nervous. I'm not an IT person, and Mr. Glynn there had some issues, and I'm hoping to get through this without some. As I said, a business owner and a resident of Yarmouth. My business has been closed since March 16th. Again, I don't want to make light of the COVID. I don't want you folks to think that my business or myself, this is a serious thing that we're going through. And again, we've been closed since March 16th. And we're currently in phase 2 in Massachusetts. And this began on June 8th. It's 3 months that many businesses have been closed completely, and I'm just hoping that the governor will open phase 3, tentatively scheduled to open June 29th. My worries are that the governor will move the goalposts, and that seems to be a common quote in quotation marks, again, by delaying the opening of phase 3 or sub-phasing 3 like he did with 2. It's going to put us in a precarious spot. With that said, I'm fearful of more than just losing my business, but the town of Yarmouth losing out on much needed monetary resources. Again, teachers, police, fire, things like that. Many of us are at the point of no return. We will have to open anyway. We feel like we're put into a position that, we need to survive. If that happens, I'm, asking the select board a request that the town administrator not use town funds to enforce state guidelines that we don't feel are just. We've tried to communicate with other folks, some political folks, things like that. We're struggling with getting answers. We've spent thousands of dollars along with other businesses in preparing for this. We've learned so much. We want the opportunity to open up and prove that we can do this, make money for ourselves. And again, with tourists around, stuff like that, offer some entertainment that right now seems to be lacking. I thank you all for listening, taking the time tonight, and you all are doing a great job, and love Yarmouth. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Bill.
Phone caller ending in 3378. I believe that's Miss Morris. You are now permitted to talk.
Yeah, this is Vita Morris. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, if you remember, I brought up the subject of the commercial on radio with regard to the application for absentee ballot the last week. And lo and behold, towards the end of the week, I get this envelope with all kinds of materials, including the application itself. At the very least, it provided some amusement, and I don't understand what the state is trying to do, but I mean, they have such interesting instructions as under eligibility, one can be a non-registered voter who is a Massachusetts citizen. So when I called Mr. Galvin's office and spoke with somebody, I said, gee, I didn't know that Massachusetts had seceded from the Union and become a People's Democratic Republic or something in order to issue citizenship. But anyway, this I guess I spoke with Ed at length about this, Ed Santio, and I guess the intentions are good, but I wonder whether anybody else is. Although he told me Dennis is doing something to, but I don't think anybody has they really extended themselves to the same extent as we have here. People should take their voting responsibilities seriously and find ways to do it on their own rather than being prompted all the time. I have a question, somewhat in line with what Joe and this last gentleman spoke about. I understand that there was a schedule, more or less, of a reopening town hall, and that it doesn't seem to have been followed. So I'd like to know what it is or what the situation is, but I think you might do very well to check in with the chief. I spoke with him about a month ago. Now, unless something has changed tremendously over there in that period. At the time, he told me that he had 2 people who were out and had recovered, and he had a full complement as he spoke with me, and everything was apparently pretty much normal. So if that's the case in a place like the police station, I don't see why the town hall cannot be open fully, not in little percentages or anything like that, provided that the governor hasn't grabbed power over that. But if you have the power, I don't see why you cannot open the town hall absolutely and fully. And that's my question for the evening.
Okay, thank you, Vita.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, we're planning on opening shortly after the 4th of July. We're still waiting, probably within the next week. Our transparency shields should be available for the public service counters. We have to do some COVID-19 training with the staff as it relates to interacting with the public on some work procedures that are required. And then we also have to stockpile enough supplies so that we can do the daily disinfections we're required to do. So we're close, but we just don't have all the equipment in place yet, but soon, very soon.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, Kyle?
We have Mr. Tom Nicanello.
Okay. Tom's muted. Tom,
Oh,
can you hear me?
yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Seems like the pandemic has quite caused a big concern for everybody, and it also brings to your attention tonight. I noticed one of our all-time favorites, the drive-in. So you never know what really happens in a pandemic, but here we are 40 years later talking about a drive-in. And, you know, speaking from a business owner here in town that's been entertaining residents and customers for 60 plus years, we like to hear about stuff like this, and we are in full support of you folks picking out a vendor, which I believe the Chamber of Commerce has been working hard to work with the staff and providing vendors for this avenue of entertainment during these what we call unprecedented times, I guess everyone says. So you know, this is quite a thing. We spent over $500,000 turning this drive-in into something else, and 40 years later we're going back to a drive-in. It's just unbelievable. It's actually, who hears such a thing like that? Only this happens to us, I guess. We're very fortunate. So you know, we're totally support. The Chamber of Commerce is, as you know, since 1961, when it was incorporated by Kevin White, who was the Secretary of the State at the time. We've been working very hard to try to make sure that this town, alphabetically on the bottom of the list, always rises to the top. As anybody saw Chronicle last night, Yarmouth was again the featured program about bringing people here to Yarmouth for a destination, which was very encouraging. We seem to have more and more opportunity, and our executive director is working extremely hard to make sure that we get the utmost opportunity we can in this little town we call heaven. I have another comment about golf and maybe wastewater. We seem to be going on a thought process of golf's going to be around forever. I don't know, 100 years, are we going to have 4 courses in town? I don't know, maybe not. Okay. I think there's some talk about using the Bass River Golf Course as a discharge station. Well, if we really think about it, 3 generations from now, there's only 2 courses in town. Which one would you rather chop up? Bayberry or the Bass River Golf Course for the financial stability of this town? I would reconsider, and there's some other people that would say reconsider about taking the discharge water from the septic and put it into Bass River Golf Course, which then that property would be only used for that forever. And you couldn't maximize your full potential. I really don't think Bayberry, has the value that Bass River does. And if golf doesn't pick up and we can't maintain it, then, we don't really need 4 courses in our little town, which is, basically 32% of our town is owned by the town. Also tonight, you're talking about conservation procurement. Okay, well, that's fine. But we also been talking about getting rid of some land that we have to make some tax revenue. Now, we should be spearing that up extremely hard because our tax revenue is going to be dwindling even more so. We have a commercial tax rate of 5.75%. And if these businesses don't survive the fall because they can't make the money in the summer, our commercial tax rate is going to go down 3%. What does that do to our residents? The scenario between residents and commercial is kind of like an automobile. The residents are the gas and the commercial is the oil. And if you don't have both of them, you're not going to go anywhere. Those 4 tires that turn around, which is the town budget, one wheel. The other wheel is the school budget. And then you have police and fire. So those wheels don't turn unless that engine's pumping. So we got to make sure that our commercial development is maintained at some reasonable number so our residents are not picking up 100% of what it takes to run this town. Now, I know staff has been doing a great job trying to bring these parcels that we're supposed to get rid of and turn them back into some money-making stuff, which we need to make money, and we need to speed up that process. We're going to be taking land back tonight, and it's going to be off the tax roll, and we're going to own more of ourselves. How much do we want to own? And with that, as one of the great hosts of a TV show, Peter Marshall, used to say, who's the secret square? Because our meetings, they kind of remind you of like Hollywood squares. So I think Tracy's the secret square tonight. And with that, good night, everybody.
John? Is that it, Kyle?
We have Miss Morris has re-raised her hand. I don't know if you'd like
Okay,
to.
let's have it.
This is Vita Morris again. I was not satisfied with Dan's answer at all. What have the people in charge been doing for the last 3 months if they need another 3 weeks now to get ready to reopen? This is not acceptable. I just don't understand this. Really. What is he doing? It's looking to see what the WSC governor is saying half the time or something like that. You have the right to open that town hall, as I understand it. And you better get cracking. Honestly, this is so unacceptable. I'm sorry.
All right, we're done with public comment. Yeah. Okay, Starbuck Lane Conservation Restriction. Who's going to take that, Dan?
Believe on the line, Kyle, should be Kelly Grant. Yes. So
Hi
she
there.
created a memo for you in advance.
Yeah,
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
I can hear you, Kelly.
Hi, it's Kelly Grant here, Conservation Administrator. I think we also have in the audience Mark Robinson, who's with the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trusts. He's been assisting the town with this matter. So per the information in your packets, this is the conservation restriction for the property that the town has recently acquired for on Starbuck Lane. It's a similar conservation restriction to the one that was recently approved for the Yankee Village property. The conservation restriction was drafted in collaboration with Mark Robinson and Town Council and has been approved by the state, and the Conservation Commission also approved it at their last meeting. And the Yarmouth Conservation Trust will be holding the restriction for the town. So as stated in the conservation restriction and voted at the town meeting, the purpose of the restriction is to assure that the premises will be maintained in perpetuity for conservation purposes and to prevent any use or change that would impair or interfere with its conservation and preservation values. So I open it up if you have any questions, and respectfully ask that the board vote to approve and grant the conservation restriction to the Yarmouth Conservation Trust, and that the board authorize the chair to execute the agreement. So we've included a motion in the packet for your consideration.
Mr. Chairman, the motion's on the very last page.
Yeah, I see it.
Make a motion. I hereby move that the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen approve and grant a conservation restriction for nominal consideration to the Yarmouth Conservation Trust for the property located at 45 and 55 Starbuck Lane in the form attached, authorized by Article 35 of the May 4th, 2019 annual town meeting, and further authorize the chairman, Michael Stone, to execute and enter into any and all, to execute and enter into any and all documents necessary to effectuate said grant.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion before we vote?
I have a question. Are there any alternatives to a conservation restriction that would allow for greater future flexibility? My understanding is that a conservation restriction really removes any potential for changes that might be beneficial in the future. For example, a recreational use or something of that nature that might be attractive to the neighborhood.
Well, I think one of the issues is the annual town meeting article. I believe it's specified conservation. Yeah, perpetual conservation restriction. That's what was approved at town meeting. It says to authorize a conservation commission to assume the care, custody, control, management, and authorize the board of selectmen and conservation commission to enter into agreements and execute any and all instruments may be necessary. So I don't think we could change town meeting's vote.
Not without going back to town meeting. But my question remains, are there other alternatives that would be less burdensome on potential future uses that might be, as I said, beneficial to that area and to the neighborhoods involved?
Is that the a conservation restriction is required because the acquisition was funded through the CPA. However, within the conservation restriction, it has the prohibited and allowed uses. So I guess there's some room in terms of what can be included within the allowed uses, but as Tracy said, the vote at town meeting is somewhat confining in that respect, that it is limited to conservation use.
What are the uses that are permitted?
If you want to look at page 4 and 5, it lists the reserved rights and exceptions. So it talks about installing trails, outdoor passive recreational activities, excluding hunting just because of the location there. And then just other more property, land management type functions in terms of vegetation management and management of invasive species, that kind of thing. So that's what's included in here at the moment.
Anyone else? Okay, let's, we have a motion by Tracy. I think Eric seconded that, right?
Right.
Yes.
So let's put it to a vote. Eric?
Aye.
Mark?
I abstain, Mr. Chairman. I am a member of the Yarmouth Conservation Trust.
Tracy?
Aye.
Norm?
Nay.
Okay, and I'll vote aye. So that passes by a vote of 3 in favor, 1 against, 1 abstention.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next item is a presentation on the drive-in site requested use. Kathy Williams will be presenting that.
Is Kathy here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you pretty well, Kathy. Do you want to give us a rundown on the, I think,
Sure.
2
Sure.
competing
Yep.
proposals for sort of drive-in property for drive-in movies?
Yeah, as outlined in your packet, the town was lucky enough to receive 2 competing proposals from different organizations who were interested in utilizing the drive-in site for the entire season for, of all things, drive-in movies. It was Vivid Event Productions and Innovation Arts and Entertainment. This is a particular situation where COVID-19 did provide a unique business opportunity because drive-in movies, as you know, are currently allowed, whereas some of the other types of entertainment that these groups do, such as concerts and other forms of live entertainment, aren't really an option at this time. Under normal circumstances, if we really were interested in using the property or having the property used for an entire season, we probably would have gone through an RFP process, which would have outlined the town's requirements and specific evaluation criteria. However, this unique opportunity has presented itself and the summer is coming very, very quickly. So we need to move quickly, and the staff is looking for some input from the Board of Selectmen regarding which applications they would like to pursue. To help with that, staff has done a lot of work with regard to reviewing the proposals. We've asked questions and provided comment and met with each applicant. We tried to identify whether there was any deal breakers for the applicants, such as hours of operation and alcohol sales. But based on our discussions, both applicants remain viable and supplemental information has been provided. And we've updated that application comparison table. And I don't know, Kyle, whether you can share the new comparison table that I sent to you earlier. There's a little bit of difficulty with picking an applicant because the proposals are very similar. But there are a few variations, and I'll try and summarize them quickly. Both applicants are proposing 2 movie screens of the same general size, built from shipping containers and using FM radio for the audio. So there'll be no amplification or excessive noise on the site. IAE is including the stage between the 2 screens, which would show the same movie, and Vivid Events is proposing 2 separated screens showing 2 different movies. Both are now considering other entertainment, should that be allowed in the next phase of the reopening. IAE is proposing a formal stage for the events by performers, where Vivid Events is proposing some type of opening entertainment prior to the movie. Audio for these events by both of them would again be through the FM radio with no amplification. Both are looking to have the ticket sales online, although Vivid Events did indicate there may be some very limited on-site sales depending on whether they've sold out. Hours of operation and duration of the season vary slightly. IAE is looking for July 1 through September 6th with a 6 to 10 p.m. daily, depending on their programming. Vivid Events provided a revised proposal looking for June through October with events from 5 to 11 p.m. Daily, but likely with fewer events in the slower shoulder season. That's a change that came out of our staff review, where there were some concerns about, they originally had looked at a 1 a.m. stop time, and there's concerns with the noise bylaw and whether we would have issues with that. So they amended their request accordingly. Both applicants anticipate having about a 500 car capacity. No liquor license applications were submitted, but IAE had expressed some interest in alcohol sales, but they made it clear that their proposal was not contingent upon that. Prices for the movies were fairly equivalent, about $30 a car, with IAE having varying prices for any special performers that they might have. Food concessions were traditional theater food for both, with some local third-party vendors being considered with electronic pre-orders and contactless payment. Both applicants had accommodations for restrooms, trash, traffic control, plan security and staffing, as well as a solid understanding of the different COVID-19 protocols and the social distancing requirements. Both are experienced event coordinators who've expressed a willingness to work with the town. Each provided some references that were vetted by Chief Frederickson, and both were known for well-run events without having problems. And the last item, although no specific fee amount were proposed, both applicants anticipating paying some fee for the site, especially for the longer duration, something that would be negotiated with the Board of Selectmen. Lastly, at their meeting earlier today, the Drive-In Site Utilization Committee did meet, and they had offered some comments for the board's consideration. They really wanted to limit the end time to no later than 11 p.m. to be in accordance with existing noise bylaw. A fee for the long-term use of the site should be required as negotiated by the Board of Selectmen. Any subletting or use of the site by others should be done through a separate entertainment license and agreement with the Board of Selectmen. They would encourage the use of local vendors and businesses whenever feasible. And they do not want to see alcohol sales on the site. They also was wondering whether they could establish a maximum capacity of the cars on the site for traffic safety. And the committee preferred a layout that had 2 movie screens separated rather than the side-by-side. So kind of due to the duration and the use of the property, I think a licensing agreement would be warranted, and town staff can certainly work with town council to formalize a draft agreement for the board's consideration. Some of the next steps, as time is really of the essence, staff has outlined in your memo there in your packets, next steps for consideration. Obviously, the hard one's going to be selecting an applicant because both appear to be very qualified and solid applicants. Then we would need to schedule and advertise the entertainment license hearing. An expedited hearing would require a specially scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting. If the board were able to select an applicant tonight, the entertainment license could be advertised in the Cape Cod Times in time for a June 30th hearing. I know that is our election, but with our Zoom meetings, that might be something that's feasible now. With advertising in the Register, the earliest hearing date would be July 7th. The applicants would need to provide a butter notification 10 calendar days prior to the scheduled hearing. And as I said before, staff and town council could start working on developing that draft licensing agreement. And then the board would have to conduct the entertainment license and finalize that license agreement. And hopefully we can execute the agreement and start enjoying some drive-in movies. I believe Jay Talerman and both the applicants are in attendance on the Zoom meeting. Should the board have any questions of them? Open it up to any questions the board might have.
Do you know, in terms of the movies that would be offered, what access each of these enterprises has? I would assume playing these movies involves licensing agreements. And do they have a list of movies in mind, or what's the story there?
I think the general idea is to having some type of family-friendly movies. I do know that IAE has some experience working with movie studios with some other things that they've done. I'm not exactly sure what Vivid Events has done. I think it's also difficult to get anything scheduled without knowing that you actually have access to the site.
I imagine did the licensing, did the driving committee have a concern about the ratings of the movies or how they were going to ensure that these were indeed going to be family type movies?
I think it was just the actual applicants were expressing the statement that they were interested in family-friendly type movies. I think if there's some reason that the board wished to restrict it, that might be something that could be incorporated into the licensing agreement to make sure it's nothing more severe than like a PG-13 or something along those lines.
Did the committee express a preference between one vendor or the other? And if so, what reasons did they give in support of that preference?
There was a lot of discussion back and forth, and they ultimately decided not to make an actual formal recommendation. But some of the things that they did talk about was one of the items that they had in their comments there with, they liked the idea of having two separate screens that were split so that there's different areas of the site that would be utilized. They also liked the idea of using local companies, not just the vendors, but also the actual event promoter. They kind of had some interest in the shoulder seasons, you know, especially since we're kind of getting a little bit of a late start this year on our summer season. So maybe extending that and having movies on the weekends in the fall would be something that would be advantageous.
Okay.
Really was kind of it.
I have other questions, but I'm going to go to other members of the board at this point, give them an opportunity to ask questions that they might have. Norm, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, a couple of different questions. One is, what kind of process is there for dealing with the abutters that, in a normal situation, we have the abutters have, some rights in terms of comments. So that's one question. And the second question is, you mentioned a fee. I'm not sure what you have in mind or if there's a projected volume of the number of cars. And the second part of that is whether any consideration had been given to a fee that would be based on the number of vehicles. So, for example, $2 per car payable to the town.
With regard to the abutter notification, the entertainment license that you guys would need to give would be a public hearing, and the abutters would be notified at that time. I think both applicants were very conscious of the noise levels, and that's why there's a lot of the FM or smartphone app where people would be listening in their cars using that. So there is no amplification. Being sure that the events ended by 11 was another consideration with regard to the neighbors. And I think also, the site lighting that they're going to have. There's a lot of comments during the staff review of making sure that that's not glaring onto adjacent properties and it's being directed more towards your area and downward onto your site. Both applicants seemed very willing to work with the town. So if their issues were identified, they would be willing to adjust as they go along, and they try things. Oh, wait a minute, that didn't work. Let's adjust it. Or if there's issues that the town has, they seemed very open to working with us. With regard to the fee, I think a lot of the discussions had been related to either something to do with the volume of traffic, whether it was a percentage of the sales or whether it was a dollar value per car. Those were the types of things that had been discussed.
Tracy?
I have a couple questions. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. This is exciting that we actually have a choice, I think. We have a licensing agreement with MIG, who's working on the bridge right there for the same property. How is that going to work together?
Both applicants received the site plan that showed the two areas that MIG has licensed already. I think one of the applicants, IAE, is really only going through Labor Day. As you know, the MIG is closed down for the summer season and they will not even be starting up until after Labor Day. And then with Vivid Events, even though they had something in the shoulder season, I think a lot of it would be probably on the weekend or at nighttime when something could be coordinated with MIG. They actually have something in their licensing agreement saying they need to coordinate with events, because we knew that we would probably have some events, probably not to this extent, that they would need to coordinate. And they've been very accommodating as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure that they can coexist in the same, and word that we honor what we've already authorized.
They're aware of it, for sure, and it was part of the staff review comments as well.
I guess one of the questions I have, and I see both of them have similar number of vehicles. I'm surprised to see that 500 vehicles fit on that property. Do we, the town, feel that that is a number that's consistent with the property, that's able to be held there? Or is it something that we need to limit to a certain amount?
It didn't come up from staff review comment level. It really came up as part of the drive-in site comments. They were concerned about having, too much traffic on the site. I think 500 is probably pretty darn high with regard to what they would need. I mean, I think that's kind of like their upper limit of what they would need based on the information that they provided.
The upper limits of what they need in terms of like to make it a profitable undertaking for them, you mean?
I think what they were anticipating they could actually get onto the site.
Okay.
IAE made a much more detailed analysis, and they looked at it 2 different ways with extra spacing for phase 2 to make it even safer, and they had lower, but then as they went on with the phasing, they felt they could be a little bit closer, and they could get up to close to the 500.
Wow, I'm surprised. I'm trying to visualize that based on, the Irish Festival and how many cars were held there, and albeit there were a lot of tents on site. I can speak for myself by saying that one of the things I would be in favor of is especially in light of what our restaurants are dealing with, I too would support a local vendor requirement. I think that would be very helpful for our businesses to have that type of support. I understand with the FM radios that it's inside the vehicle. I guess trying to look at the site plan. And when you say 2 different screens, you're talking about like together playing 2 different movies. I'm not sure how that would work.
Maybe if Kyle can show the Vivid event excerpt, it just kind of shows a couple plans there. I have little excerpts plans for both applicants, just if we wanted to see the site plan.
So basically the windows would have to be closed so that if a car next to you is, so they're totally facing different directions.
Correct. The other applicant, IAE, that the 2 screens are closer. They're shown where that first screen is next, closer to the lobster boat. And there are 2 screens there, and it would be the same movie that would be shown, and the parking would extend all the way back. And they would have their concessions kind of where the other screen was. So I don't know if Kyle can show that as well. It's in they should be in your packet as well in the presentation materials that they provided.
I do see it.
And you can see that area too. Both of them had blocked off that area that's part of the MIG licensing area.
Okay. It looks like a whole lot more spaces.
There was a comment at the drive-in site that they were concerned that maybe some of the people in the back spaces might not really be able to see all that well because of the size of the screens and how far away they are. That's kind of why I think they lean towards the two screens.
Okay. I mean, we're assuming that it's such a hit that we get far back, which would be a great thing. But I mean, what's the distance you think from?
If you give me a second, I can measure it.
Just curious if it's even a feasible layout.
That's probably about 500 feet from like the screen to the back spaces.
These are very, very close. So when you mentioned in terms of the Board of Selectmen working through finances, was there any part of the proposal that they gave you that they offered any comments on town finance? You know, what they'd be interested or willing to,
For the fee?
yeah.
Yeah. I think that they kind of wanted to have some time to maybe crunch the numbers a little bit more closely once they knew that they might have the site. But I think, you know, the idea of you know, $1 or $2 per car or something might be something that's possible.
Was there any conversation with the fire department in terms of the number of vehicles on this?
Um,
I mean, there's one entrance and exit. I guess that's what makes me nervous about that number of vehicles.
Well, the fire department didn't feel that they needed to have any emergency like EMT on site. And the comments that they had were related more to, you know, the propane tank licensing, or, you know, if they're going to have anything for concessions and that, the fuel storage and that type of thing. They did have a good comment about being sure that the site is mowed regularly and the grass is low so that there's, you know, any warm vehicles aren't igniting the dry grass from a safety. But other than, you know, there was some talk at the first one, the police and fire were only available for the first one, but the comments were similar comments, or actually apply to both proposals. But they were just kind of making sure you have enough staff to direct people, making sure that the emergency vehicles can get in and out. And also there was some discussion with regard to a police detail on site. And both of them appeared very interested in having a police detail available on site, work to help with security, to help with the traffic, to just, you know, have that calming effect on the whole site.
And I see the address for AE being that of Forestdale. The other one's in Sandwich, is that correct? So they're both Cape Cod located?
No, I thought
I
that,
think it's from Chicago.
right. They're
Which
from
one is?
Chicago. IAE is from Chicago, Illinois. They're a fairly large firm. They've done events, a lot of events over on Martha's Vineyard. But the other Vivid events, they are local.
Okay. Good. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kathy, are you suggesting that we make a decision on the proposal tonight and then follow it up with a public hearing, not make a decision after the public hearing, but make it before the public hearing?
That had been the concept. I think you have two solid vendors here who would do a good job. There, like I said, there's no fatal flaws in any of their proposals that we could find. They all checked out, like I said, with regard to Chief Frederickson, taking a look at some of their references. And so maybe this is a case where you can make a decision. I don't know how the applicants would feel if you advertised the entertainment license for both of them. I don't know whether they would be comfortable with that, or whether they would.
Yeah, I would be interested in your thoughts. What about the board making a decision after the public hearing? I would assume the public is interested in having at least some effect on the process. So if we were to make a decision first and then have a public hearing afterwards, how would they effectuate the process?
Well, it would be exactly the same as if you had only had one applicant. One applicant would go before the entertainment. It's not as though you're approving everything that they're proposing here by choosing one vendor over the other. You're just identifying
so
one to move
we wouldn't
forward.
be approving everything right now. We'd be approving some things. Is that what? I'm trying to understand.
Well, the idea is to decide between the two applicants as to which one you find is more viable to proceed through the public hearing process. Like I say, the vendors are both on. If you were interested in going forward in parallel with both of them and having the public hearing for both of them, and then you can decide then, that that's something to ask, I think, them tonight and get a better handle on that, on whether they'd be okay with that.
So you're suggesting one option would be to have a hearing on both of the proposals?
That is certainly an option. I did not discuss it with either applicant.
Okay. Did you have any recommendations on the fee or the revenue to be derived? Have we had any time to do any homework on what's an appropriate amount of revenue to expect or to suggest or recommend for the board on something like this?
Not yet. I think that's certainly something that can be part of the negotiation as we move forward.
I feel that it would be helpful to have recommendations in terms of what's an appropriate,
Yep.
the revenue for something like this. I also think that the recommendations from the committee about time restrictions and alcohol, I think those are, I support those. And it would be helpful to have better definition as to the kind of, we're sort of making the assumption that these are family-friendly movies, but they really, did they tell you specifically, both vendors, that that's exactly what they're doing, or they just?
The second vendor, definitely IAU, because it was just discussion. I can't recall exactly whether Vivid Events said that, but I would assume so. But like I say, they're online here if you want to ask them some specific questions. I hate to speak for them if they're available here to clarify.
Not just yet.
Okay.
I just want to just at least get out right for the moment, at least what my questions are. I do agree it's important to hear from the abutters. But I mean, I think overall, I think this is what we've been hoping, is that by acquiring the site, we'd be able to get a public use, public benefit, and to be able to offer periodically some entertainment. So this has been sort of a trial and error situation that we've been in, and so far it seems to have worked reasonably well. I know from time to time there's some issues and questions that come up. I support Tracy's point. I think it's very good about seeing about local vendors. I think the challenge here is that when you don't have an RFP, each vendor can sort of tailor their proposal. But if we actually were able to specify, and I understand time is the enemy here, I recognize that these are just proposals that came in the door. So I don't want to sound critical on that, but sometimes the benefit of having an RFP is that you can lay out specifically what you want. You can max out the cars, you can make it clear what the fee is. And maybe both of these, if we had standard requirements, it could very well be that both of the operators could deliver on them. So I know my questions don't come to a conclusion here, but I think they're very similar to the other points that have been raised as well. I know we're venturing into new ground here in terms of the process, but I would have trouble picking one without a lot more information. And I'm not sure the board spending the night sort of grilling each of the operators or the proposers. Is that what you were suggesting that we do tonight, is maybe engage them in a dialogue or a Q&A, Mr. Chairman? Is that part of tonight's?
You can do it any way the board likes, Mark. We didn't have any preconceived format because, as you said, this thing came upon us rather suddenly. The drive-in committee met this afternoon at about 3 o'clock to discuss this after reviewing the materials. And I'm not complaining about that at all. It's just the nature of the beast. So you're gonna have, if you do select one tonight, you're gonna have to ask your question tonight, obviously. As Kathy says, I don't know if you're waiting for public input on the entertainment license. The only way that I can see you doing that without making a decision tonight is to put both licenses on for hearing at the same time. And I don't know if that would be acceptable to the applicants, but if you'd like to ask them questions, I certainly don't have any problem with that. I'd welcome that if that's what the board would like to do. Let me go to Eric for a moment. Eric, do you have any comments or questions?
I do. Thank you. I have several. In reviewing the side-by-side comparison, I think that there are a lot of pros and cons to each. I'm in agreement with some of the other board members that I think whichever one we choose tonight, and I do think it's important to choose one tonight, both for the sake of time, and I also think it would be unprecedented to have parallel public hearings running. I don't recall ever in my many, many years of town service that you've had competing public hearings. I think we have to pick one and let that vendor move forward with the process. In terms of I had some thoughts on the revenues. My initial thought was to tie it to gross sales, but I like the idea of a per car fee or percentage. Again, emphasis on local vendors, and whichever one we select, I'd like to see a more developed plan of what they intend to sell on site and what will be supplied by local vendors. I think both of them are, general concession type foods listed in their application, and both are open to local vendors, but I'd like to see, more detail on that. My initial thought was that side-by-side stages would be distracting, or side-by-side screens would be distracting, but I do like the rendering of the stage that is created between the two screens to be used for other purposes. I don't know that I would be supportive of alcohol sales on the site. We all know people bring their own booze to drive-ins, and I don't think it's a good idea for people to be selling, for the town to be selling or to be condoning the sale of alcohol to people who are ultimately going to get in a car and drive away. So, that is not a business that I think the town should be involved with. Other than that, both of the presentations included in the packet are very impressive. I think that either one will do a fine job, but I do think that we need to make a selection tonight based on what we have. Let Kathy go back to the successful applicant and try to negotiate as best she can based on the comments that come out of this meeting here tonight. So that's all I really have for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I noticed, Kathy, in the comments that the Drive-In Site Utilization Committee made that they would like to establish a maximum capacity of cars on the site for traffic safety, and yet they didn't make any suggestions as to what that maximum capacity might be. How do you suppose we should go about filling in that number?
I think it kind of came up with something that Jim Saban was saying, is that he didn't feel comfortable if there was like 1,000 cars there every night. But both applicants have proposed less than 500. That might be something where you can set a limit at, 450 or something, if the board's a little concerned about that, and see if that's still something that's marketable for the two applicants. I think that might be a good question to ask them as well.
Okay. So they're both in attendance now?
I believe Kyle did indicate that they were.
Yeah.
Kyle says we have them both. So I'll tell you what, why don't we bring one of them up, and then we could go around and have the board ask them any questions they might want to, and then have the other one come on so we don't keep jumping back and forth. Do you want to do it that way? Yes. Okay. So which one are you bringing up first for us, Kyle?
So Adam Epstein of IAE Entertainment is now permitted to talk.
Hi, good evening. Greetings from Martha's Vineyard. I've been here since March, since the quarantine started. I own a home here for almost 10 years, and this is as much a home to me as Chicago is. I was born and raised in New York. I spent most of my summers when I was growing up in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, going to summer camp. I'm a as much Massachusetts person as I am an Illinois and Chicago person. But just to start off, I wanted to thank the selectmen, the people of Yarmouth, Kyle Pedicini, Catherine Williams, and the rest of the Town of Yarmouth team for allowing me to address you tonight. We're very excited about our proposal to bring a little bit of social engagement through entertainment back into our lives during this unprecedented time. Our industry, producing and promoting live entertainment in its clinical definition, is about attracting large groups of people to gather in enclosed spaces to watch a film, an artist, musician, or comedian present something original in person before your eyes among other people. As is probably obvious, as soon as I said the word gather, that opportunity has not been part of anyone's life since mid-March. COVID's left a massive void that used to be filled regularly. Shows and films were plentiful and ubiquitous. After months of hibernation, people want to get out safely and experience some semblance of that creative social experience again. People need to be able to share those experiences with their friends, family, and neighbors. We see it at ourselves at IE as enablers and creators of those unique experiences that bring people together. And we see drive-in venues as a transitional opportunity between quarantine and typical live events with people in close proximity. We see showing movies as a way to bring families, friends, and neighbors together again. The movie is an attraction, but it's really togetherness and normalcy that will be bringing people to the old Yarmouth Drive-In. As you've probably heard or seen, there are already several drive-in movie sites within 40 miles. There are regular drive-in movies in Wellfleet and Mendon. There are new sites that have popped up right down the road in Hyannis, Sandwich, and New Bedford. We don't want to just replicate what they're doing. We realize that there is a craving to get together to watch a flick with some friends and family, but we also see a real opportunity to fill up the massive void left by the inability of the traditional live entertainment industry to use traditional venues. We see the Town of Yarmouth Old Drive-In site as the home for a multi-dimensional performing arts space, complete with movies, and when state law permits, live performances by musicians, comedians, and other types of artists. Yarmouth would be the only place that this type of entertainment exists on the Cape, and it would become, for this summer, the place to safely experience a wide array of entertainment options. That unique opportunity will fill restaurants to whatever capacity permitted, possibly even hotels, and have people leave Yarmouth for their Cape residences with a smile that can only result from satisfying a craving that's been denied for months. What I ask is for you guys to look at our company as a company that is among the top 50 promoters and live event producers in the world, with a home in Chicago, but a home on the Vineyard and a home in Massachusetts. We understand what it takes to both produce large events, but also attract audiences. And we're looking to create that kind of engagement again among people. The movie's a vessel, but it's the attraction to being social and experience something together that we really put a lot of emphasis into fostering. I understand that we're not technically local, but the site itself can only be staffed and created by local companies. We can coordinate people together, as we did on the Vineyard when we produced Beach Road Weekends Music Festival last summer. For the first time ever, we produced a 3-day music festival on Martha's Vineyard successfully, both critically and from a sales perspective. We arranged for 65 semi-trailers to be brought to the island and back seamlessly without any incident. There were no arrests. There were no problems. The festival went off by all editorial support flawlessly. Any amount of research will back that up. You can look online. We sent some links over. But what we're saying is we have a 20-year history of producing events just like this. And we know how to bring people to Yarmouth, and we know how to do it safely on your site, on your property. And we really hope that you choose us to make that happen.
Okay, Adam, thank you. I'm going to go through the various board members and see if they have any questions for you. So if you could just hang tight for a moment.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Good. So Norm, let's start with you. Do you have any questions of Adam?
Yes, one to start with. First of all, thanks for coming. I appreciate the presentation, and we're anxious to have use of the facility such as what you have proposed, and I think it would be an asset to the community. So I'm looking at, I'm wondering, it's been 40 years since there was a drive-in on the site. I certainly don't recall that. And don't recall what it was like. And I'm wondering if you have other similar venues that you could discuss, tell us about, and number one, how they work, what the typical volume is, and number two, what the revenue stream is to the owner of the property.
Surely. So the most relatable experience I have to a site like this, frankly, a site that isn't often used, and just to give you some background, I was on the drive-in site back in March. I spent about an hour and a half wandering around, and when I was there, I wasn't actually looking at it as a drive-in. I was actually looking at it as a potential festival site to mirror what we'd already done on Martha's Vineyard. So I was looking at it that it was only after the pandemic and the shutdown that I started to think that a potential transitional space where drive-in entertainment, drive-in opportunities for live entertainment could be offered. So what we saw was a big open field, about 6.5 acres, if I recall, and it aligned perfectly with the exact layout and format of what we had done in Tisbury in Vineyard Haven on Martha's Vineyard last summer, in a park, Veterans Memorial Park, that had never been used for anything other than softball and recreational soccer, children's activities. Important, but it had never been used for public events. Right in the middle of Five Corners, which is a high traffic zone with, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with it, but there are no traffic lights or stop signs. And there were three roads that all intersected at one point. So we had a challenging site in many ways. And we set about creating a plan by meeting and constantly asking for feedback of vital town services to create a traffic, public works plan, fire, police safety, and emergency services to round out a plan that offered safety and comfort for the audiences and town personnel that serviced the event. The event went off, as I said, flawlessly. We had over 6,500 people on Saturday and Sunday each. And as I said, there were no arrests. The traffic was not a problem. And I think if I heard you correctly, I believe there were some reference checks done on the people we worked with over in Tisbury. And I believe, based on my experience and my understanding of that relationship, that they had an equal recollection of what I'm relaying to you, that things went off well. And we would relay that open-mindedness and hearing about what your understanding is of the space to build a system that works for you. We don't come at it with preconceived notions. We're in a really unusual time. So we are building a flexible system, but one that will be built around consensus and input. So it wouldn't be based on what I bring to the table. Now, as far as revenue streams, the entire operation, of course, would depend largely on admissions. And so we are counting upon selling access to the entertainment that we would offer, but we would also diversify that income by selling concessions. The concessions, of course, are traditional for movie theaters, traditional for performance venues. We would look towards offering local businesses and restaurants that have the infrastructure in hand to be able to build within your health codes and conditions a system that works and offers opportunity to the local restaurants, while also helping finance the overall investment that we've made. From an overall perspective, our concept was that we would compensate the town of Yarmouth with either a few dollars per car, or a percentage of sales, or a percentage of net sales. We're open and flexible to the alternatives. We are unaware of every nickel and dime and how it would have to be spent yet. But the other thing that I just want to emphasize is that getting people to show up takes a lot of marketing muscle that will not be inexpensive. We have an incredible proficiency at that. We spend approximately $15 to $20 million a year on marketing alone, with the goal of both enhancing the reputation of our venues, the reputation of the towns that host us, the entertainers that appear on our stages, and hopefully recovering our investment. So beside the dollar value, the actual marketing and promotional support that we offer will also yield hopefully a benefit to the town of Yarmouth, attracting people to your town. I hope that answers your question, and I hope you don't think that I'm looking for the marketing to compensate in a dollars way, but the marketing will drive people to the site, which will drive revenue to all of us.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you for that. Your explanation did stimulate a couple of other questions, specifically with regard to your investment in the site and how much of a time commitment you would be looking for in order to recover that investment.
We are looking for the minimum of the 2-month window. We did not want to overstretch and ask for the space for too long, which is why we asked for July and August, basically through Labor Day. If there was an interest and it was successful, we would be absolutely interested in extending that. By the way, I'm sorry, I thought there was a video feed. It looks like you have a picture of me and my dog. So, I have the video working, but I guess it's not transmitting. But anyway, I apologize for that.
So you're not anticipating anything beyond this coming summer season?
Well, actually, the reason I was on the site in March was to look at it as a potential festival site, and and the other opportunity here is to get to know each other, so that we could expand upon potentially turning this site into a permanent entertainment venue.
Okay.
Right now, the Cape Cod Melody Tent declares and grabs all the entertainment dollars in the Cape area around.
Yeah, that's good observation. Yeah.
But I see this site as having the potential capacity to really make an impact and attract top-level entertainment like what we bring to the vineyard. So, we had over the last several years, we've had with John Fogerty, Phil Lesh, Grace Potter. We've done over 100 shows on Martha's Vineyard. It's always easier getting shows to the vineyard when I can pair them up with another town. So if I had the opportunity to create like an outdoor amphitheater where I could also host those types of programs, it would help the booking of those events.
Sure.
That's one thing we do very strategically. We call it block booking. So we pair cities together and make multiple city offers to talent.
Okay, thank you.
Tracy.
Well, I really like what I heard. I like the flexibility, but specific to our comments, Adam, about the number of vehicles, the alcohol sales, things of that nature. Can you speak to the concerns or comments that we have made previous?
Yes, thank you for asking that question, because it was something I raised my hand before and I wanted to address. On page 12 of our proposal, there's actually a very specific, all of our plans were done by engineers and site architects. So these are all done to scale. So the site that you're actually seeing, you need me to, I'm sure I'm proficient, since my video is not working, at getting that screen up, but it says vehicles at the top. There you go. Yeah. So during phase 1 and 2, you can see the dimensions of each space that we declared. So we said an 18-foot width and a guarantee of 12 feet between vehicles and 21 plus feet between rows, guaranteed 2 lanes of traffic. That would only allow for 242 vehicles on the site.
Okay.
And then we presented, as things open up a bit, we showed a potential scenario. Once again, it's potential, so it's flexible. But phase 3, when you narrow the spaces to a little bit more common size that you would find in a traditional drive-through, you can see that the spaces we're outlining are now 12 feet wide, and of course, thereby you can get more vehicles. Now, the numbers that 695 is not accurate. That's a typo. I'm sorry to say that. It's actually approximately 490 for phase 3. So that would be phase 3 only after we had gone through phase 1 and 2, and you had all authorized the enhancement of additional cars on the site. The great thing is you don't have pre-assigned, like, outlined spaces at this time. So it's flexible. It's not like you're working in a paved parking lot.
Well, what's you must know, really what's the number that, what's a comfortable number for you? I guess.
We see, because we're looking at nightly entertainment, it's not like a one-time thing. It's about showing movies and producing events that attract audiences of all different ticket prices. We would even have scaled prices that, depending upon where the cars were located, you would pay more. So we would offer reserved spots, not open spacing. So people would pick their location. And so there isn't necessarily a number of spaces or a number of cars sold, especially in the pre-budgetary time that we're dealing with right now. It's a little premature to say what the break-even figure would be.
Okay.
But what I can say is that we're prepared to make the investment, as we've done when we produce shows all over the place, that we estimate. First, we put a budget together for all the different equipment and marketing needs that we have. And then we create an economic picture for what that would look like. And then we figure out ticket pricing, and we figure out, talent budgets, the entertainment licensing that we would need to contract the movies to show. There are many variable expenses. So it's difficult to say, but what we would commit to is building the venue according to town specifications. Like when you build a performing arts center, you really don't know what you're going to sell. You just have a belief that there's an audience to support it. In the weird sense, if you build it, we hope they come, right?
Mm-hmm.
To quote a movie. So we are making a strategic, quote unquote, wager that we believe there's an audience to support this entertainment, provided it's a diverse selection of entertainment. We don't necessarily think, as I said, that we could generate enough revenue by just relying upon movies because of the 4 other movie theaters within 40 miles.
What about a rating cap? Is there, have you put any consideration to,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. When we talked to Kathy this morning, we specifically mentioned that we were looking for family-friendly movies where people would be comfortable bringing their children and generating our whole idea is selling popular movies that have wide audiences of all ages. That's the best strategy we can think of to generate the highest number of admittances.
Okay. And there were comments also related to alcohol sales. Tell us your thoughts on that, please.
Our perspective on alcohol sales, of course, is that it's optional for you to decide. It is not a contingent requirement of our proposal. It is something that we like to have as an alternative when it's available, and we know that we can do it safely as long as we work with all the proper emergency services and the police departments, et cetera, and according to state law. We were issued the first ever, you all probably know that Vineyard Haven was dry for most of its existence until recently. Innovation Arts was issued the first ever day permit to sell alcohol in Vineyard Haven. I made history of it. So, but we sold alcohol for the first time ever with a day permit as part of our festival. And by all accounts, things happened perfectly. There were literally no arrests. There was nobody escorted outside of the festival as a result of the festival itself. But that said, once again, it's not my decision.
Okay, in terms of mitigating noise for the neighbors, say we picked your company and we advertise the entertainment, there's no doubt that the neighbors will have some concerns about that. Can you tell us how you will or would handle noise and noise concerns?
Absolutely. The FM transmitters, of course, help constrain it. We're not going to be able to keep people with their windows closed because the vehicles themselves can't be running, right? You don't want the exhaust, you don't want the noise. So the vehicles themselves have to be powered down, and that means their air conditioning can't run. So we have to allow them to keep their windows open, but by having security, t-shirt security, ushers, attendants, minding the field and minding the volume coming from vehicles, we expect to be able to keep the sound contained. We were very successful at doing that, frankly, in the middle of a neighborhood in Vineyard Haven as well. That's Park is right in the middle of town. We didn't use FM transmitters. We used a different type of sound technology because all the sound has to broadcast from the stage, but we were successful at containing all the noise. And that's one of our expertise, is finding the right sound systems to meet every demand or need of a certain space. And the FM transmitters, in this case, we feel we'd also look into the possibility of controlling the volume from that singular source, the transmitter itself. Be able to max out the volume.
Would you be amenable to a license that made different times for, say, the live entertainment possibilities as opposed to the drive-in?
Absolutely. In fact, it wasn't in our original proposal, but I was talking to a friend of mine who may actually be observing this call, who said, you know, afternoon concerts might be nice too.
Yeah, well, they did a country fest a couple years ago that was very well attended, and
I think it's a great idea. It was just a kind of a bit of an autopilot thing, putting 6 to 10 p.m., but having an afternoon event can be fun.
well, I like your flexibility, and I think that it's going to be important because when we get to the public hearing portion, as Mark said, there's going to be some concerns, and we want, you know, everybody to live happily, and we also want a venue like this for our residents and visitors. So I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric?
I think the couple of questions that I had have been answered. You know, I'm a little, I guess one of the reasons I look upon this application slightly more favorably is because of the earlier shutdown time. I think that would be helpful in appeasing abutters. 10 o'clock sounds a lot more attractive than 11, but that's not to say that the other applicant might not be willing to accommodate us with an earlier shutdown time. So, you know, that's really all I have for now, and I thank Adam for the presentation.
Thank you, Eric. Mark?
I too want to thank both Adam and Kevin Pacheco for making these proposals. Obviously, as we go through this material and we discuss this, clearly a lot of work went into this, and it's very valuable to get this kind of insight and this kind of attention to this particular site. So my thanks to both of you for the amount of time and energy that you've invested in this. Like Eric, most of the questions that I have been answered. I really don't have anything else, and I'm actually comfortable with the notion tonight of picking one proposal and then moving on with it. What I'm concerned about is just making sure that when the abutters and other people come in, there's an opportunity to at least condition or be able to react or act favorably or act on behalf of some of the concerns that we might pick up that we just haven't thought about. But I'm impressed with both proposals, and Adam, again, thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of matters. We're just about done. In terms of the shutdown time at 10 o'clock, are you talking about entertainment or movies or both?
Both.
Both. What time would you start a drive-in movie in the summertime?
It would be probably between 7:30, depending on the length of the movie. We would go right up until the end of the curfew time, whatever that would be.
Because most of the ones I've seen start at around dusk, and it's usually, I could be wrong, but I think it's more like they usually start them around 8:30 or so.
There's obviously the ambient light that we'd have to consider. In some situations, for example, in Beach Road situations, we actually elected to use LED screens that were high resolution and could be seen during the daytime. It's obviously more expensive, but what we're seeing right now is that all of the vendors we traditionally would rent LED screens from for live events don't have events. So they have a lot of inventory collecting dust in their inventories.
The drive-in site utilization committee recommended that we establish a maximum number of cars, and it's a very difficult thing for us to do, not having had this kind of operation, A, with the movies, and B, with the diversification as it expands to other forms of entertainment. But I do agree that there should be some limit so that the premises don't get overcrowded. What do you think is a reasonable upward limit?
Frankly, it's not for me to decide, but we do believe that the math tells us. And the fire marshals normally have a very good assessment of the amount of square footage per person. And generally speaking, that's our ultimate guide. We did use traditional spacing when it came to creating the size of a parked car, as like the actual phase 3, I believe, site or recommendation is actually larger than a traditional vehicle spot at, like, say, a shopping mall or supermarket. So traditionally, you would, in a drive-in, you would get 2 cars within 18 feet. That's what most drive-ins are rated for. We have actually started with 1 car per 18 feet. Okay, so we are automatically expanding and reducing the capacity until the point at which you tell me you're comfortable. We're planning on generating revenue through a multi-dimensional strategy. We also think we can potentially sell maybe some advertising on the screen between movies, things like that, ways to help underwrite the revenue and to not worry so much about the capacity per se, but trying our best to keep ticket prices modest, have a decent local food offering, and generate revenue through all of those mechanisms. So one does not necessarily outweigh the others.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have at this time. We're going to go to the other vendor. Is it Kevin Pacheco? Is he with us?
Yep, Kevin is now permitted to talk.
Kevin, did I pronounce your name correctly? Is it Pacheco?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I cannot hear them.
Oh, no.
Nope. I heard the whole meeting until right now. Kyle, did you mute me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Kevin.
Sounds and
Hey, can you guys hear me? This is Palmer Egan.
Yes.
whatever.
Excellent. I can hear you guys loud and clear.
Come on. Hello.
Kevin.
Did their Zoom meeting just end?
Palmer with
Can you
Kevin.
log in on your computer or you don't have the site?
All the papers have Kevin's name, but I guess. Palmer, are you with Kevin?
We're not together.
It's not working.
Not.
Really,
Okay.
really sucks.
But Palmer, you are associated with Vivid Events, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So until we get Kevin, or if we can't get Kevin, are you able to give us a quick overview of your presentation?
Sure. Yeah, Kevin and I are partners. We've been working on this project for quite some time. We looked at the site years ago, but of course, we're in the same business. We're in the event business, so thus the COVID situation has put a halt to everything, and we could really focus on. The other guys went through the site pretty well. The two plans are very similar. Egress and traffic is a main concern for us. We spoke with the chief of police and the fire marshal to get multiple lanes in and one lane out, and the one lane out was always used for emergency use at any given moment, and vice versa on the way out, with 2 lanes out, 1 way in. That's been important. Do you guys have any specific questions? I'm not sure how familiar you are with our proposal versus the other.
I'm here now as well. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you. I hit unmute now and lost you. So here we are.
Okay, good. I just want to give you the same opportunity that we gave to the other applicant. He gave us a brief overview of his proposal, and then I went to the board members individually and they asked questions. So you don't have to do that, but if you wish to, you're welcome to.
I enjoy the opportunity too. Adam touched on many of the facts and educated us all on a lot of the history and creating a family-friendly environment for the community. So I won't go into that and waste anyone's time on reiterating many of the same ideas. We have a lot of the same ideas. I'm sure both of us have been looking at this for quite some time. We've been looking at this property now for quite a while. I sent the first email, I think, early in May with some of these questions. Just to give you a little history of who I am. I'm the general manager of Vivid Event Productions. We plan, strategize, and produce turnkey events for many businesses, municipalities, and charity organizations here in New England. In the short time, we found that this meeting, a lot of impacts via COVID and what it has on our community. Palmer Egan, who you were just speaking to, he's my partner, my business partner in this endeavor. And we just plan to create a fun, successful entertainment experience for the town of Yarmouth and Cape Cod. Like listening in earlier, we are the local vendor. So hearing you guys speak about the local vendors in the community as far as restaurants and maybe mini golf and other other businesses, well, we are the production, we have the production business here. The equipment that would be needed to produce both of these events, we own, and it's stored in Mashpee right now. So Adam touched on the point of how the local vendors are chomping at the bit because our equipment is collecting dust. He's correct. It is. Here at Vivid, we have 8 full-timers that all have families that depend on our livelihood. Typically, when we first heard of COVID, we had 4 semi-trucks out in Miami to handle 7 different events for Miami Music Week. We lost thousands of dollars just in shipping those trucks out there for the events to be canceled. And so in doing so, Palmer and I have been looking at that site for quite some time on trying to figure out different events to produce. Being a production company and owning a lot of the equipment that's needed, we to put all of our chips in and go all in on red, so to speak, or invest a lot of money and take that risk of opening events and marketing, which we do handle, and we have a team that handles that with us. For us, we can just go to other promoters similar to Adam and do 7 different events in one night. And that way I don't have any risk involved. I'm guaranteed money from all of these different vendors that need to rent stages, which we own exactly like the one proposed in the other proposal. And all of the equipment, like I said, is all turnkey. I used to production manage the South Shore Music Circus and the Melody Tent. I was only there for about a year as I started our company shortly after that. I was managing another company for about 15 years, and the owner of that company now is just Elder, and Vivid Event Productions will be buying him out in the next year or 2. So that being said, I don't want to ramble on too much about many of the points that were already hit. So I'm trying to look at some of my notes that Adam was doing a great job of just hitting them one by one. And like I said, you can only look at this proven plan so many times. I guess some of the differentiating factors will be, which I think are great and very cool, and we can easily produce as well. If we want to host Grace Potter for a night and bring her down and load her semi into one of our stages, we can do that. And, you know, maybe we can work together with Adam in the future. We look to work together with everybody in our community, and it's impressive that somebody is in the area that does what we do as well. So maybe we can bridge a relationship in the future. So Adam, I'm sure you're listening, and I welcome any opportunity to work together. That being said, what we're looking for is, you know, he stated that other towns are doing drive-in movie theaters. And he wants to bring a little more originality to it, which I'm all for. I just don't think the numbers quite work for that in the short amount of time that we need to market. I mean, that's why a decision tonight would be beautiful, because we need to go and get this done. I mean, we're willing to go until it gets cold outside, really, and it will help recover some of the losses. I originally put in on my application for the site that I was hoping to start for Father's Day. And, you know, Kyle and Kathy were just, you know, obviously that's not going to happen. But I was trying to remain hopeful, but we were working on our numbers for hopefully Independence Day. It was kind of like, okay, if we work with that, you know, all of our numbers will work out great. Honestly, we'll still be fine going into the shoulder season. We choose drive-in movies rather than just events because it is proven, but also many groups on Facebook. The reason all the, you know, different towns and Chamber of Commerce's are hosting drive-in events is because it just works. You know, I have children as well. I have a 4-year-old and a 14-year-old. So I know about different programming. The world we live in is, it's a crazy one, but I like being a man of integrity and valor and showing my children like how to work together, but also, you know, showing them really nothing over PG-13. You know, we're open to suggestions. We're going to look at some of our competitors as well as other, you know, Chamber of Commerce type events that host a one-off event for the town. The reason we looked at the drive-ins, like I said, is just so we know that's what the people want. You know, I posted it in the town of Sandwich, and then other people have keep tagging me and my company in other Facebook groups around the area. And all of those comments seem to have about 500 likes and 250 comments of all people saying that they would come. All of the movie theaters in the area are sold out. I don't have to experiment with what band, what works, flying them in, getting their semi on site, making noise during sound check. None of that. It's simple, it's proven. We play the movie on the equipment we own that's located down the street, and we work with the town on any needs possible. We're looking for partnership. We're local. We want to do as many events in the future as possible. You know, the reason why we're looking for this, like Adam hit on, is that our company does own the inventory and it is collecting dust. So we're just like, okay, let's host it ourselves. You know, many companies hire our company to be the turnkey people, to oversee the parking staff, to oversee production, to oversee, make sure that the bathrooms are being kept up, make sure that logistics are happening and marketing. Other event promoters hire us for years to handle that. So I just want to let you know that that is here on Cape Cod. And unfortunately, 90% of our events are off the Cape. We mostly do weddings out here. Other than that, everything's over the bridge. And so for me, this is a great opportunity in our backyard to show the town and show everybody what we actually can do with equipment that's stored right up the street. So with that being said, I am open to any question, and I will be forever.
Yeah, I just want to add, we do many local events. We currently control the Mashpee Commons stage. So any of the programming that's gone on there, that's been the local bands or even some of the nationally touring acts that we've brought in, that's all controlled through us. We also do a lot of work with Love Live Local. We host 2 to 3 occasions with them down in Hazelton Park. We've done that for the last 5 years. I think Mashpee Commons is the last 4, maybe 5 years. We did the Father's Day car show that was down on Main Street, Hyannis last year. It's canceled for this year, of course. But yeah, we do local stuff. It just happens to be smaller occasions, and it comparatively to what we're doing in New York City, or if we're doing the Gronkowski beach party in Miami. Relatively speaking, we're not in the same wheelhouse. But the other thing I wanted to mention is 2 screens we think is a pretty cool idea, because we can change the programming. So maybe one screen is PG while one screen is PG-13. We've got Toy Story going, and then we have, of course, the favorite Jaws or Indiana Jones happening. But the intention is for family programming that's in compliance with, of course, the noise ordinance and shut down. I think what the chairman said, that movies, theaters, drive-ins, depending on, of course, the daylight savings, but it's really going to be 8 or an 8:30 start time. So at 10 or 10:30, 10 is probably just on the edge, but we feel 11 o'clock by the time you get all the vehicles out of the lot is more reasonable.
Well said.
I was waiting to hear Jaws. I'm surprised it took so long. That's a given that one will be on the calendar no matter what happens.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to go to questions now from the various members of the board. So we'll start with Norm. Norm, do you have questions?
Just in terms of, again, revenue stream, what kind of revenue stream to the town are you comfortable with? And number two, the two theater proposal. Tell us about that in relation to the one theater. What advantages, disadvantages you see with regard to that? And I'm wondering about things like, one movie is an hour and a half, the other movie is 2 hours long. How do you manage that sort of thing?
Well, for the movie lengths, we're going to pick movies that are very similar in length, and then also it'll have a contrast as far as viewing audience, so we can try to maximize potential for filling in front of the screen and trying to hit our numbers. And so we'll look at a lot of the movies like post 2015 are about 128 minutes, and then pre 2015 are much shorter. They're about 72 and on up. And so depending on what classics we're going to show, I mean, many of the licensing agreements that we're working on right now, we can show current movies under the current guidelines because the other theaters are not in business. So the licensees are trying to, which we use Swank Motion Pictures, they're trying to push on us, newer releases where we want to do family-friendly classics that, I want to bring my daughter there and have her see a movie that I know she hasn't seen, but the family experience, I mean, half of it isn't even about the movie that's on the screen. Most families just want to get out, bring their kids somewhere, grab a popcorn, get a cotton candy, and have a family experience they will remember forever. So for us, that's why we'll put the Goonies up, we'll have Back to the Future, they share similar times. And then we will try to, what we're looking at would be like, depending on the summer season, a lot of this is up in the air because how long it takes to open. So every weekend that we lose income really varies greatly on our overall take and what we can offer the town. And so that's why, numbers are hard to exact right now. It really depends on how quickly we can get open. For us, the site build, we're typically going into music festivals and building a site in a matter of days. When we're doing large scale concerts at like Madison Square Garden and whatnot, we load in at 7 a.m. with 6 tractor trailer trucks and we have sound check at 1 and doors are at 6. So building up a few screens, we're looking at about a week time for build, which will also work perfectly with our marketing ideas.
Yeah, we're not quite sure. That's of course a guess, but we're trying to use Pat Jacobs Construction. He's a Yarmouth resident. His company here, he's going to help with the assembly of the screens. We are structural engineers from Mashpee. We're trying to use him and Baxter Crane. So between organizing the three of them and getting the containers shipped here, we're hoping to do it in a week.
Yep, exactly. Now, as far as revenue, we've looked at a lot of different ideas to offer the town, and it really depends on what exactly is fair. What are you guys looking for? We've toyed with about $1 a car, and then looking at how many vehicles per night. And it really just depends on how many weeks of the season. And that's why a sliding scale will work best. I mean, obviously for everybody's benefit, the immediate opening and a month later will probably sell out 90% of the nights, I'm hoping. But in reality, we may not. And that's why I feel a sliding scale may be best to offer. It may be tricky on how to word it in the licensing agreement. Maybe we do something along the lines of at least a minimum of X and a maximum of Y, or we show you our box office per night, or maybe we do a monthly checkup with the DMV on the property, and let us know if there's anything that needs to be changed. I mean, I implore working with Amanda at the DMV and trying to figure out, what's best for the property, what we can do to move things around, or make sure that we leave everything in the condition we found it. I feel like I got off track though of the original question. I'm sorry, Chairman. Did I answer that?
No, I think so.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
There was Norm Holcomb's question, and if he says that he's satisfied, count your blessings and all in the night. All right, gonna go to Tracy.
I really don't have any questions. I think he's answered the majority of them. I appreciate your presentation. I think I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just one quick question, Kevin. Can you give me some examples of where you've done similar types of operations?
Mm-hmm. Well, we haven't done a drive-in movie theater before.
Okay.
So
right.
This is slightly new, but at the end of the day, you're selling tickets and bringing in patrons. So as far as everybody staying in, normally parking the cars is a small percentage of the day. Normally that's the easy part, and then the rest of the event is what we focus on. So for us here, it's kind of blending different events together that we have done. Obviously, with the COVID restrictions, everybody's looking at how to get entertainment to the masses. And with phase one allowing the drive-in, we will mend with that as well. It's some examples of being different places that we work. We take care of the events for the city of Lynn. So you can check with the community development director for the city of Lynn. They restored the theater there. I think it was back in the late 90s, and we worked extensively with them on the planning. We found the promoter for them. Initially, we were doing it for them, and then they were looking for a full-time staff member, which they have now found, and have had for the last, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years. So we handle a great majority of the events there now. Due to it being a municipality, they have to go to the lowest bid, and so we have, over the last couple of years, have started bidding ourselves out because of financial reasons. But we're still there at 90% of their events, but there's a couple that we just are too expensive sometimes for, which may work out for them, but not for us. But yeah, City of Lynn, you can go on their website and see all of the caliber of shows. It's mid-level acts, but lots of older greats as well. They have like an Alice Cooper or Kenny Rogers or Little Big Town. Different events like that. And we also take care of the PJ Masks shows where we bring in our trucks, our equipment, our staff. We take care of catering, logistics, getting the guys with our runners from the airport, booking their hotels, taking care of all of that, which we work very closely with Henry Ryan over there in James Marsh. And so that's one location there that's local. I'm just trying to think of the most local things. Otherwise, recently was Bronx Beach Party out in Miami. That was the last event that we actually worked, where our entire staff worked for months planning it and getting everything going for the Super Bowl. And that was literally the last place that we were all wore radios and ran around and made things go. But Gronk hired us, being a Massachusetts company, and knowing that we brought high quality. I think he's seen us at a Best Buddies event that we did on Craigville Beach some years ago. We used to do the Craigville Beach events as well on the Eunice Shriver location. And that was a great experience all around. They eventually found that it was more cost effective as our bills started rising. I mean, they would ask for things last minute and we would have to scramble, make it happen. And, they look at the bill and they're spending $385,000 on one day of this monstrosity. I mean, they raised $6 million, so I guess it was worth it. But eventually they looked and said, okay, we're going to bring our own semi up because they own some equipment after doing this for so many years, where they would eventually bring up some of their own gear, but we would still manage and staff it.
Yeah, we did the yellow dog as well over there, Kevin,
Yeah, that's right. That was fun.
On Corporation Beach.
Thank you. I'm set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Eric, do you have anything?
I don't have anything, but thank Kevin for the narrative and what is also a very impressive presentation within the packet. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have one question that you talked about in terms of the operation of the drive-in movie. You would be thinking beyond the summer season and into the fall. You indicated that you'd do that until it got cold outside. So in terms of your proposal, you're asking the town to enter into an agreement with your company for the summer season, and how far going out?
We were suggesting until Halloween, maybe, and we could just capitalize on the Halloween holiday, and maybe show Beetlejuice or something fun for the kids to go out. Maybe in the future we all get together and try to think of different events and maybe host a trunk and treat. Depending on the COVID restrictions, it's really hard to say. But coming in for the license agreement, I personally think it's better to go for a broader amount of time for what we all agree upon. Should we collectively as a group, and working with the Chamber of Commerce's and different events that we can try to produce. I personally thought it was a great idea to try to extend into shoulder season, as we lost so much revenue as well. And especially looking at the weeks that are going by while we're hopefully getting approved, that we can recoup some of our initial costs.
Yeah, we'd also like, it's a little bit of the restaurant mentality here. It's the heyday in July and August, but the locals are still here. We're all still here in September and October. We may not have operation 5 days a week or 7 days a week or whatever it may be, but we certainly would like to, temperature provided and people can withstand, the temperature. We'd like to stay open through certainly September and into the fall.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to add, oh, sorry, this is Kevin again. I'd just like to add, being local here and I mean, I'm sure we all have family and friends wherever, but there's not much for the kids to do right now. And it really irks me to have this equipment that could benefit the community. But unfortunately, there's not many properties out there that aren't undeveloped. Most of the farms are sold off for housing. The airfields, which we have contacted, obviously do not want to change their layout. And so you have a unique opportunity here with the property that you have. And I think combined with my resources and experience, we could really benefit each other very well. And, we're willing to play ball with whatever is needed by the abettors. We don't want to disrupt them. Let's give them season passes and have fun and create some relationships here.
In terms of the summer schedule, how many, do you intend to go 7 nights a week with this?
It wasn't our initial intention. Oh, Palmer, you can respond.
Yeah, it was not the original intention. It's simply going to be a numbers breakdown and obviously a demand. We're not going to show a new movie every single night. If we're selling out and people want to come and see the movie the following night, then we'd like to open. Wouldn't of course be as randomized as that, but certainly, the majority of the week for the evening duration, we're trying to be available and open.
Yeah, we're definitely flexible where I have toyed with the idea as far as maybe, shutting down one of the days to give the abutters a break from whatever may be coming in. But I think right now is the time to try to capitalize on everything that's going on. I mean, I drove down Main Street, Hyannis the other day, and it was packed. You could not tell that there was a pandemic going on. Everything, and there's just nothing for anybody to do. So, and looking at Mendon and Wellfleet, they're selling out, days in advance. So I feel that right now we could try to maybe push for more towards a 7 days or 6 days a week program, and then kind of even out as the
knowing it will taper off as the season goes.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you both very much. Unless anyone else on the board has any questions, I'd like to go to the various board members and kind of get a sense of what you'd like to do in terms of deciding between the two proposals. Unfortunately, we don't have the leisure of putting this decision over. We have to do something tonight, and I'm sure that all of us would prefer to have a little more time to sort all this out, but as they say, time is of the essence and the decision has to be made tonight. So Mark, I'm going to go to you first. What are your thoughts?
Well, you're right. I'd like to have a little bit more time, but we don't have the luxury of more time. Once again, I just want to, I'm very appreciative of all the work that both of these organizations have done. You know, we've kind of gone into this with a bit of a leap of faith, hoping that the site could turn into a place where we could see this kind of activity. And the fact of the matter is we have two very solid proposals from capable firms with a solid track record that can deliver. I'm comfortable with tonight picking one and then moving it on to, you know, enable them to negotiate the agreements and some of the other provisos and conditions that we've discussed tonight, and work out an agreement. So I'm prepared tonight to sort of make another decision, and I'm even comfortable making a recommendation on a company, and subject to a successful agreement. I mean, I'm going over Kathy's next steps. She would like us to select an applicant proposal and then schedule the hearing, and then begin the abutter notification process, and then work out and negotiate a draft license agreement. So I'm prepared to move forward in all of those items. I have to admit, in the beginning of this meeting, I was a little bit reluctant to do it. But again, this is an unusual situation right now. We have two solid proposals. I think I'm more in Eric's camp now. I'm prepared to move forward, make a decision, and then allow the parties to work out a successful agreement. I'm a little uncomfortable as the board negotiating, for example, what the per car fee is. I don't know. I've done no homework on it, and we have no really information in front of us. But I do expect that when those details get developed, that'll all come before us. But I don't have any more questions, and I'm prepared to move forward. So those are my initial thoughts. If you're interested in hearing me advance an individual proposal, I'm happy to do that. But I'm also interested in hearing what the other board members have to say as well before we put before the board one proposal to recommend.
Norm?
I'm impressed with both proposals, and we do need to move ahead. You know, we're not accustomed to making decisions with regard to risk enterprises, and other than in our golf situation. Any revenues that we might receive from this are all found money as far as the town is concerned right now. And I think that settling on a number that the vendor is comfortable with, you know, if it's a couple bucks a car, I'm comfortable with that as a starting point. And we move ahead, and if the future points to a different arrangement with regard to revenues, at least we've got a year behind us, and know what the volume has been of cars, that a number of people that have been attracted, and we can move on from there. We can change the arrangement if that makes sense in the future. Both high quality firms and high quality presentations, but at this stage, I guess I would tend to lean toward the local company, Vivid Events, and that would be my recommendation.
Okay, Tracy?
I agree with the majority of what's been said. We definitely need to move forward. I think that, as Norm said, this is, you know, these are events that we didn't have planned and otherwise wouldn't be able to do. I'm not sure about how the fee structure would be different potentially with a live event as opposed to a car event, and how that would work with COVID. I'm comfortable with the drive-in, so I guess that would put me to lean towards the drive-in one. I have to say that I felt a little bit more flexibility, although both were great. I liked really what I heard from IAE. So my my sense would be to lean towards them. However, I know local is important. I'm comfortable with that as long as, I didn't hear much about marketing with Vivid, but as long as the vendors, they seemed very amenable to hiring local vendors. And when I say local, I think we need to be specific to Yarmouth. And I don't think, in terms of, we definitely should be looking to cover our costs for any town expenses, but anything over that, there's a huge community benefit to this. And I think we need to keep that in mind. There's a lot of families that would love to get out and have something like this in our town for families. So I think it's wonderful. I'm prepared to support either one of them, whatever the board feels strongly about. But I definitely think we need to move forward and start the process. So.
Thank you, Tracy. Eric?
I'm a little concerned that I keep getting called on last, but I suppose you're saving the best for last.
Well, you're my cleanup hitter.
I agree with the other board members. Both presentations were very strong. I think if I were leaning in one direction, it would be towards IAE. I liked the shorter hours of operation. I liked the phased parking plan. I kind of consider that to be a soft start. Let abutters get used to the idea before the site reaches capacity. And, I also liked, the initial shorter season. So, all other things being equal, those were really the three components that contributed the greatest deal to my tendency to go with IAE. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. The concern I have with those shorter hours, even though they sound good, I don't know if they're realistic. I mean, typically, I'm looking at my watch now, it's 10 past 8 and it's not even dark yet. Usually you wait until it is dark before you run a movie, and then you got to allow some time to clean out. So I think realistically, no matter what's agreed to, you're talking probably 11 o'clock before that drive-in site clears out. So the hours are not a big factor to me, because I think whether it's 10 or 11, it's going to end up being 11. They're both
well,
great.
then the other one turns into 12.
What's that?
I said, using that logic, then the other applicant would be midnight.
No, it's just that to run a movie as opposed to a different, you can run a concert in the afternoon, for example, but a movie, generally you want the dusk to arrive before the lights on the screen come up. I'm not saying that any other event would necessarily have that same problem or that would apply to any other event. I like the fact that the other company is local, but I can honestly tell you that I would be satisfied with either one. And I'm not saying that to make this more difficult for anybody. My first preference would probably be the local company. I also like the fact that they're around, they're available, and we might get more of a shoulder season out of their proposal, which I think may help us bringing people into our town in September and October, especially with the business loss we're probably going to have at the beginning of this summer because of COVID-19. Whereas the other vendor is more, more distant and unlikely to do much in the fall season. So those are my basic thoughts. But like I said, I could easily support either proposal.
Mark, did you want to talk about your preference before I make a motion?
I actually share Eric's preference. I think they slightly edge out the other proposal. Obviously, I'm impressed with the presenters from both, but Adam Epstein to me, if you can make something work on the vineyard is a very challenging place to do these kinds of events. And to have some success over there is, I think, says something. So I would, like I said, I think they just slightly edge out the other proposal. I thought theirs was the stronger one. So I would recommend as a board that we pick the AIE, Adam Epstein's proposal, and start
You
with
want to
that.
make a motion on that, Mark?
Then I make the motion that the Yarmouth Board of Selectmen accept the proposal presented to us, and subject to a suitable agreement negotiated by the parties.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any further discussion before we have a roll call vote? Okay, we'll start with you, Eric.
Well, thank you. I vote aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Norm, Mark?
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well. I see Norm's name up on the screen, but I don't see the video. I don't know if he's connected right now. So that we'll take that as a 4-0 vote. And we're going with the IAE proposal subject to a satisfactory agreement. And obviously we have to do a licensing hearing as well. Entertainment license. There you go, Norm. Would you like to join in the vote in favor of IAE? There are 4 affirmative votes. Would you like to make it unanimous, or do you want to be the lone dissenter? Huh? You vote aye?
No, that's fine. I'll join in. I had to go take bread out of the oven. Sorry.
Trying to figure out if that's real or if that's a term for something else. I don't know.
No, that's real. That's real. I make sourdough. So.
Oh,
okay.
No, I'm hungry.
So that's a 5-0, I guess. Thank you. All right, we're done with that. Next item is COVID-19 updates.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think Finance Director Ed Centeo's on the call here. This is, we're requesting permission under the Board of Selectmen authority to do some, identify 2 accounts in deficit spend, and Ed will give you some detail on that.
I just was talking to Kathy Williams. We're going to have a special meeting on this for June 30th. So that we can do the entertainment license, because the next date would be July 7th. And time, time is big here, so.
You got it.
All right.
Hello, I've been unmuted, so I'm ready to go through the option that the state of Massachusetts is giving us to allow for the setup of 2 special revenue funds. Those special revenue funds would allow us to segment the costs related to what we're going through the COVID-19 situation. This would be a situation where we would set up a fund for expenses that would be reimbursed by FEMA, and a separate fund that would be reimbursed by the state through the federal money that was given to them via the CARES Act. The benefits of actually having this special revenue fund is that we can deficit spend this fund without it hurting our free cash or net fund balance situation, because they know that we will be getting the reimbursements from either FEMA, CARES, or both of those particular entities. In addition, the ability to segment these funds allows us to ensure that we're reporting these funds to these various agencies, and we can maximize the benefit from the funds that will be given to the town of Yarmouth. And all in all, this seems like a very good opportunity for the town to take advantage of, but obviously it's up to the selectmen to decide which way they would like to go with this.
So Ed, where would the funds come from that would be expended that would later be reimbursed through these accounts?
The funds would come from the cash that the town of Yarmouth would have on hand to pay for these items. We're not going to get the money up front. It's very similar to a FEMA disaster that might be related to snow or tornadoes or anything of that type. We would pay for the expenses and then we would be reimbursed later. However, in this particular case, if we didn't have this particular fund, if it were, say, a grant fund, which was reimbursable, and we didn't get the funds by the end of the fiscal year, that would count against our free cash, or, you know, having a net positive result at the end of the fiscal year. And we're going to be challenged for revenues, not only local receipts, but also real estate receipts. So we're fighting to have a positive net balance at the end of the fiscal year. And this just allows us to spend the money for COVID-19 related issues without having the penalty of also having our free cash reduced.
So these accounts would pertain to the current fiscal year?
These would be the current fiscal year and into next fiscal year as well.
Okay, so it would overlap both?
Yes.
And how would we know, at least in a ballpark sense, how much money we'd expect to be receiving by reimbursement when we made decisions to spend funds?
What I've been doing when people have asked whether certain expenditures are COVID-19 related and would be covered either by FEMA or the CARES Act, there's an email line that you can actually send those scenarios to the state, and they will respond fairly quickly within a day or two to indicate whether those expenditures would be reimbursable by the CARES Act. And if the CARES Act says it's reimbursable, we would submit most of them to FEMA. FEMA might pay 75% and CARES would pay the remaining 75 or 25%. But if FEMA declined it and CARES indicated they would pay for it, they would pay 100% of the charges.
What would happen if we didn't have these accounts and we spent the money and we'd applied for reimbursement? Would that render us ineligible?
No, it would not. The benefit of actually having it in the accounts are the second two bullets of the pros, and that is it will not count as a deficit as the state is calculating our free cash and our fund balance. And those funds would actually not be in each of the individual departments' expenditure accounts. They would be moved into this special revenue fund so that when we do our reporting to the state, it's much easier to do that reporting from that special or from the special revenue fund, as opposed to trying to find these expenditures throughout all of the different appropriations of all of our different departments.
Okay, what do we have to do to create these accounts? Just have a vote to do that?
Yeah, there's a motion, a potential motion at the bottom of this document that you could choose to use if you like.
Sounds good. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that the town establish special revenue funds that may go into deficit for the purpose of paying for COVID-19 related activities that will be reimbursable by FEMA and or the CARES Act.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion before we vote?
No, I just strongly support this, Mr. Chairman. I just think this is, we need to do this. It makes sense. It very much is helpful from a financial management point of view. So that's all I have to say.
Just a comment.
Mr. Chairman, I have a, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just have a question on how these funds go into deficit. You know, obviously the money to pay the bills has to come from someplace. I just, you know, not having the accounting background, I just don't know how that works.
Let me bring up how we handle grant accounts. Maybe that would be helpful. So for example, let's look at the Parker's River or the Gristmill Baxter's Gristmill project. We have to expend the funds. Once we've expended those funds, and we set up a separate grant account for those funds. When we expend the funds, we then look at what the expenses that are in those funds. We use that as part of our reimbursement request from the federal government. So prior to actually getting the reimbursement, that account goes negative. The reason why that account can go negative is because we have enough cash on hand because of all of the other funds that we might have that we haven't yet expended. And then what we do is get the reimbursement, and then it goes to zero, meaning that we've received all of our reimbursements.
So we essentially borrow from other places, and then when the when the money comes in, we go to zero and we reimburse the things that we borrowed from. Is that it in a nutshell?
Pretty close. We don't actually, we don't necessarily borrow it. I guess you could say we do, but we have an overall cash balance that the town has. And we're utilizing that overall cash balance to actually pay for these items.
But it could happen. I'm not saying it's likely to happen, but it could happen that we could spend X dollars, and then after total reimbursements, we could be a little bit short, right? In terms of it, and then any deficit would have to come out of free cash. Is that how it would work?
It would have to come from the town in some way, but we're trying to be careful about that and conservative by actually emailing the folks at CARES, keeping a copy of those documents, we'll attach them to the particular invoices so that when we produce the documents, we know that we will have a very good chance of getting paid for these items. So, we're not going to look to put anything into these funds, and we've rejected some of the people asking for some of the items to be CARES Act related because of the feedback we've gotten from the state.
Okay.
So are you saying that once CARES, whoever that is, approves this, that there's no risk involved?
I never like to say there's no risk, but yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say. And what they're trying to do with the CARES Act is make municipalities whole for this event. So the allocation for Yarmouth, for example, is a little over $2 million. And I don't know that we're going to come anywhere close to that, but they're trying to infuse money into the localities to make us whole for anything that we would have to deal with in terms of the CARES Act.
Okay. Honestly, just from past personal experience with FEMA, I'm not very impressed with the credibility of that organization. But if we can get pre-approval, then I certainly would support this. I think that makes a lot of sense. But if we're rolling the dice with FEMA, I think that's a bomb that'll go off and not in our favor.
I agree. I would not depend totally on FEMA. And, you know, what might happen with FEMA is that it may take a while for us to get these funds. So that's, you know, that's an issue with as far as timing and cash flow. But, you know, I think the mandate here is to kind of keep the towns whole so that, you know, they don't start having towns go into bankruptcy as it relates to, you know, these types of expenditures. We are not even close, so I don't want to say that. But I think, you know, some of the communities aren't on the edge of, you know, financial stability, not necessarily in Massachusetts, but elsewhere. And I think what they're trying to do is ensure these communities stay whole and are able to operate.
All right, so we have a motion. Unless there's any other questions, we'll go to a vote. Mark?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Norm?
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well, so that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. The next topic is, I just wanted to give you a quick update as it relates to the business licensing or extension of premise and alcohol extension activity. So we've approved, I think Mark Grills is on the call, so he's in charge of making sure, as we discussed last week, that people are appropriate with their outdoor dining, their location, and the zoning. So if Mark could weigh in on that, I can talk about the alcohol permits later.
Mark, do you want to update us on the regulatory relief portion of the restaurants operating outdoors? Dan will give us a brief update on the liquor licensing component after you address this one.
The applications, I've had about 15 applications. I think there are 4 that still require a little bit of information for me to authorize them to be outdoors. I've only had to grant 2 variances, one for Oliver's and the other for Captain Parker's for their tent locations. The variance was granted in about 15 minutes, recorded and distributed within 5 minutes after that. So things seem to be moving along pretty good. Like I said, I've only got 15 applications so far, and I think 4 of them are the ones that I'm just waiting for a little bit more information on.
Okay. In terms of inspections, you have to go out on each one of these, somebody from your department?
Yes.
And how you doing staff-wise with being able to respond expeditiously to go out and inspect these sites?
My guys are out every day anyway. They're doing inspections all over town for different projects. So there's always somebody floating around someplace that can pop in. And if they're too busy, I myself will run out to the site and give it an inspection. The inspections don't normally take more than 10 or 15 minutes.
I think when you and I were talking early on in this process, you mentioned something that I think maybe businesses should hear, and that was that when you get an application, you like all of the information at once. You don't want it piecemeal because it's too hard for you to track that file and find out what's been submitted and what's needed. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yes, the application packet is located on the main website, the town website, but I've also asked Kyle to place a copy of that application packet on the building department website and right beside the tent permit application. So therefore, all the information is right there for them to grab. I believe they're fillable PDFs, as well as the variances are fillable PDFs, which enabled me to get them processed rather quickly. I think there's at least 5 emails between me and the owners. There's the links right there on the webpage. I think the contact between the owners and myself has been very good. We're constantly discussing, and if they get a response from me, it's usually within 3 minutes. In, you know, among other things, I have realtors calling me all day long, looking to subdivide properties, and I get numerous phone calls and emails all day long, but I've been concentrating solely on getting these businesses open back up.
Good. So,
Or mainly, I should say.
When you get an application, though, you'd like to get it all at once, right? Not just several submissions piecemeal.
Yeah, every now and then there's a follow-up question, you know, or I need a little more detail on the plan. But, you know, aside from that, it's actually been going fairly well.
Good, good. Any problems so far?
No, I've not identified any problems so far. There's, like I said, I'm concentrating on the restaurants, but there's a constant flow of inspections. There's permits being issued every day. I think we're up over 1,400 permits since March 16th. So, you know, and everybody there is getting their inspections done. So we're out all day long, every day. My guys are working very well and very steady, and I haven't identified any issues yet.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask Mark about?
I'm just curious, out of the 4 that are pending, what is it a commonality that you're missing that we could identify better, or
No, every site is specific, so you know, I need a little more detail on a plan usually is what it is, or the dimension that they're proposing for a tent, for instance, just doesn't fit on their site where they're proposing to put it. So I send them I'll send them a picture of their site and ask them to identify on the plan where it would fit. And so the town having electronic files is actually quite helpful in getting that information out to them.
Well, I just want to, I know that this has been a hot topic, and I know it's been very, very important to the businesses. And I just appreciate all the work that you and Dan and your staff have done. I know Friday we got an update shortly, you know, after some of the people were nervous for the weekend. And I know you guys worked diligently and hard, and the entire building department, everybody, to make sure that they were open for the weekend. And it's very, very appreciated. So I just want to say thank you personally.
Well, thank you. I have to say, all of the staff from community development right into the building department, including Dan and Linda Hill, have been very helpful putting this information together. Actually, 5 minutes after the governor's announcement, Kathy and Karen were in my office. We're developing those forms that are on the website today. That's where it started. And then, you know, Kyle was instrumental in getting the information out on the website, and Dan and I are in constant communication when it comes to, you know, I want to make sure that he's aware that I'm ready for you know, that they've passed their inspections, and that Dan, if Linda has all her information that she needs, that Dan can go ahead and issue that liquor license. So it's actually really been a team effort, and Yarmouth Fire has been there for their inspections. The health department's been getting out on their inspections, and Bruce, Phil, and Mallory have been very helpful in getting the health department inspections complete. But thank you.
Anyone else?
Just a comment. I really appreciate the work that's being done with regard to the restaurants in particular, and I'm wondering where we stand with other businesses, hotels, retail outlets, recreation. What does it stand now with regard to those types of businesses? Because, you know, it's not just restaurants that are suffering right now.
Sure. All of the hotels during the whole shutdown, while they were vacant, there weren't people in there. I got the owners that were due their annual inspections to let the building department and the fire department do their annual inspections. And as far as I know, everybody passed their inspection and they're ready to go. Cape Sands Motel, for instance, today, that's the motel that was damaged by the tornado, that the roof ripped off. While they can't occupy the building that's damaged from the tornado, the other building, we issued a certificate of inspection for them to open the rest of their building, or we're getting ready to. They passed their inspection today. The retail establishments, I don't know where they stand as far as the COVID-19 process through the state, but they are eligible. They can apply for a permit through my department for outdoor display. The zoning bylaw allows for that. And that information has been discussed with temporary commercial outdoor display. That information has been shared with the Chamber of Commerce and with several of the retailers, and I'm not sure. I actually haven't issued any permits like that, so I don't know what their statuses are.
So the only way that a retail business, let's just say a candy store, can operate is to have things outside for sale.
I don't know the details of that.
Dan, can you speak to that?
Well, my understanding is that the retail establishments are similar to like the essential businesses, like supermarkets and whatnot, that they're allowed a certain percentage of their occupancy to be in there. We don't have that much of an interaction with them unless there's a public complaint, and I'm not aware of any. So there's also curbside. A lot of the retailers have been good at curbside related activities as well. So depending upon, like, for instance, I know the Christmas tree shops were open. They were counting people at the door. So, I mean, it's all a matter of to what degree can that business owner's facility and accommodate the public that's going into it.
All right, so we don't, to our knowledge, when there are no specific regulations preventing retail businesses from opening, is that correct?
There's nothing at the local level that would impede them that I'm aware of that would prevent them from opening. That's correct.
What about recreation businesses?
So recreation, a fair number of those are open for business to some degree, although bowling is one that's looking like a phase 3. I think Ryan Family Entertainments, they've been in touch with us. So that's still off the docket, but there's a lot of outdoor recreation that's all pretty much all permitted now to go on. But it's indoors a little bit more problematic right now. Is there a specific type of recreation that you're interested in?
Well, that was one that came to mind, but you know, there's a lot of other kinds of businesses, particularly along Route 28, that are recreation oriented.
I know Bruce Murphy's been working with the ownership at the inflatable park to discuss how they can open under the conditions that have been laid out from the state on that. So if I get more information from Bruce on the status of that, I'll let you know. But you know, just we're doing whatever we can. I think you've heard it from our team that there's nothing going on at the local level that's impeding anything.
So I guess if those businesses that are having difficulty when they're looking at phase 3, if they open up, do we have any responsibility one way or the other with regard to those businesses?
Well, as I had mentioned before, the state gave us local enforcement guidance to follow, and I had given that to the Board of Selectmen. But ultimately, if a municipality chooses not to enforce the state's protocols or their orders, then it's on the state. And I believe there's at least one gym owner, for instance, in Central Mass that's been dragged into Superior Court, was given a cease and desist order by the court. So it's not anything that we're not, like I said, at the local level, we're not impeding anybody at this point. So
good.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Norm, are you finished?
Yeah, I hope we can be firm about our intent not to pursue actions against our local businesses one way or the other.
Well, I'm gonna get to that.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, you know, based on my discussions with many of the local business owners, the general sense is that the governor is trying to take a one-size-fits-all approach to phasing the entire state and has been insensitive to the unique circumstances we here on the Cape find ourselves in, given that we are an economy that is highly dependent upon tourism revenues. So I would like to make a motion that we allow businesses to do or to perform their business to the maximum extent they feel comfortable without fear of local repercussions, because most of the people I talk to are willing to take their chances and duke it out with the state. They're not so comfortable with whether or not there will be local enforcement. So if anybody wants to help me refine that motion, the crux of it is to allow all businesses in Yarmouth to conduct business to the maximum extent that they feel they can conduct it safely without fear of local repercussions.
I'll second that.
I understand the point you're getting at. And I think obviously our businesses, I agree. Let's just say that. I think that there could be a false sense of security for businesses to open based on that motion, because ultimately I think the state has authority. And when it comes to certain businesses, I would be afraid that the state could, regardless, still take action against them. I'm comfortable with, asking Dan if it's within our purview to be able to not enforce locally, but to give authorization, I think would be, or could be problematic if the news tomorrow says board defies, and of course the state sees that, and then they come in and, they could suspend a liquor license for defying it. I don't know what the potential could be. But I would hate for us to give the sense to a business that we have the ultimate authority to be able to do that, because after all, number one, it's an advisement. And number two, it's the state who's made that. So I'm not sure anything that we're going to do other than asking for town resources not to be expended to enforce that would be probably where I'd be more comfortable. But
my intent here was not to grant authority. My intent was to grant flexibility and letting business owners be flexible in determining the maximum extent that they can conduct their business in a safe manner. And if this is in your words, this is a state thing, let the state enforce it if they're so inclined.
Well, the town itself didn't put any restrictions on any of the businesses. So it wasn't the town.
No, but the fear is local enforcement, more so than enforcement from the state level.
I think I'm saying the same thing. I'm just saying it a little bit differently. I believe that, I think that we should basically stay out of it. Allow the businesses can do what they want to do. I think that's one thing, but for us to make a motion basically allowing that, I think is something different. So the avenue I would prefer to take would be to just ask no town resources enforce the state rule.
I think that's what Eric said.
Okay, well, his motion was to allow them to open to the extent comfortable, and I think that is something a little bit different.
Well, I also had the caveat, without fear of local repercussions.
Right.
So
right.
Again, it's just giving flexibility to businesses. There's nobody saying they have to do anything. They can
judgment.
It's they can comply completely with what their views of the phasing plan is, or they have flexibility to disregard the phasing plan to the extent that they want to take their chances with the state. I just don't, I want our businesses to be able to open if they feel that they can conduct their business safely. And if they are willing to take the chances with the state, I think that we should provide them with that flexibility.
Mark,
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, I mean, I understand, listen, I get calls too from people who are very frustrated. And typically my response has been, give me something specific that I can work on. And then usually, or why isn't the business community coming together with some specifics in terms of where they might find relief or seek relief? And generally I haven't been getting anything. But there's no question there's frustration out there. And I think we all feel some desire to act on it and to be constructive in some way. Because your original statement about this cookie cutter approach, I think there's a lot of validity to it. I also think that there are a number of businesses and individuals that have lost a lot of money. They're hurting, and they're looking at what's going on, and they're wondering why they can't get into business to some degree. Why are they excluded? Why can I go to Walmart or this store or that retail store, and I can go in there and I can do business there, but I can't go to a local shop in my own downtown. I get that. I understand that. Now, my understanding was that the so-called reopening task force, and I'm not an authority on it, but my understanding is that they were to really act as a liaison, a voice, a way to sort of vocalize some of these very, very specific issues and concerns regarding state government. And that's the job of this sort of 3 organization partnership: the chamber at the table with the legislators and the county. That to me seemed like the right group to sort of voice issues and these kinds of concerns. But unless there's something specific, I get nervous about a perceived blanket absolution. But I'm very open to hearing, another proposal or another set of recommendations. But I think we have to be, like Tracy, I'm somewhat nervous about even how something well-intentioned as it might be perceived as the town of Yarmouth thumbing its nose almost at everything with such a blanket absolution. I'm very comfortable with the board authorizing some resources to be spent collaborating with town council to see if there's some way to more finely tune some kind of expression of concern that may be able to get at some of the specific points rather than us crafting it tonight. But I'm comfortable with some more work being done on this. We're going to meet again as a board, I believe, on town meeting night on the 22nd. I don't want to suggest that I'm oblivious to the frustration that you're picking up, Eric, from a lot of people, and because I'm picking it up as well. And I think we're all struggling, or at least I am struggling with how to channel that energy and that frustration in a way that's positive. I also believe for a lot of the businesses that have lost money, that obviously the state and federal government haven't done enough to sort of help ease the pain in any way. You've got literally the government basically saying you can't operate a business. And in my view, that's really impactful, and there needs to be some financial relief and help that comes along with it. That's only added to the frustration here. So I'm not prepared to jump in on this tonight, but I'm very sympathetic to the concern, and I'm also interested in if there's a desire to try to spend more time crafting something that might be more reflective of some very specific things that we can address. I'm open to that as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I could address a couple of points there.
As long as this is not a Gettysburg Address.
No, not at all.
Just kidding.
I don't think that we can rely on a task force that we have heard from for 15 minutes in the 3 months since this has been going on. For weeks now, I have advocated for Yarmouth taking charge of its own destiny. And really what I'm asking for is no more than what we've done for the beaches and for, the beaches, in that, we said thank you very much for your guidance, but this is the direction that we think we're going to go. We're just extending the same thoughtfulness to our businesses, and our businesses are struggling. I've heard the number thrown at me that if this continues through July, which may be phase 4, as many as 60% of businesses might not make it just in Yarmouth. And I'm not willing to sit by and watch that happen, because what are the consequences of that happening? Tom Nicanello brought up the subject of our extremely small business tax base being diminished to almost nothing, and that will put the burden more on the residential home taxpayers than it already is. We need to take action to get our businesses back up and running.
I'd like to comment on that. I think it's very important for us to signal a real level of support for our local businesses. And I know in my case, I've written and emailed all of our state representatives and our state senator. And I've also written letters to the Cape Cod Times, pointing to the issues about needing more local control over our whole situation. And I think Eric's motion simply says we will not use local resources to the detriment of our businesses, and let them take the risks that they're accustomed to in their business, in their normal business. We encourage them to follow the safety protocols that are necessary and to do their best job in that regard. But at the same time, we're not going to come down with local resources to try to essentially shut down their businesses. So if a group of businesses wants to get together and that have not yet been included in the governor's plans, and decide that they're going to take the risks that are necessary, then I think, as far as I'm concerned, that's fine. And the level of support that we show for them is to say we will not locally do anything to prevent them from opening.
So, no, Mr. Chairman, just a quick question to get some clarity here. So, Norm, you're suggesting that if the state issues an order and somehow, because I know some of these orders require local boards to act as the enforcing agent, you're suggesting that any of these orders that require local enforcement not be complied with? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm suggesting we follow Eric's proposal.
He's the one.
Okay, now, okay. I hear you. The fact is local municipalities are political subdivisions of the Commonwealth. We generally have to follow state law, and if the state's mandating that we do something, that's generally
We're advising. It's an advisory.
it's an advisory. Okay, so there's an advisory there that it's. So are we suggesting that any advisories? Again, I'm having trouble getting my hands around the specifics of it. It was one thing when we were talking about beaches. Beaches were very specific. A closed beach in the middle of March when hardly anybody's on the beach is one thing.
And there was no state closure.
I'm suggesting that the state be responsible for enforcing its own advisory, and that the town not take any action to support or enforce the advisory. This is not of our doing. We don't need to enforce it. This is contrary to what we would do, or that some of us would like to do.
I understand. I'd be interested in what is town council with us?
I'm
Mr.
not
Chairman.
He was there for the drive-in.
Yes, he's not.
Maybe Kyle.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what council has to say.
Kyle says he's not with us.
He's not with us?
No, not now.
Okay.
Mike, what do you think?
I'm with you and Mark. I have concerns. While I agree with the spirit of what Eric says, to take a position that we would not take enforcement action regardless of how extreme some circumstances might be, and leave it up to the individual owners. I mean, a lot of them may be very reasonable people, but then you may get somebody that's not reasonable and packs people in like sardines and creates a major health risk. And we're going to say, well, we're not going to intervene in a case like that. I'd rather get some legal advice before I staked out on this. And the beach issue was different. There was no state order closing beaches down. The governor had closed some parking lots to state beaches. It was really, the dispute we had was with our local board of health. We weren't going head to head with the governor on that. I think we all support our local businesses and want to see them get back to where they are. But how do you take a case where you have these businesses now that are getting permitting through the building department and licensing through our town administrator? If the next guy just ignores that and puts a tent out there and doesn't get a license, and that's what he deems fit and what he deems appropriate, we just stand by and say we're not going to use any town resources to enforce that. It's just too open-ended for me. And as Mark said,
I think it's important. I think it's important we support our businesses. We're not talking about the restaurants. That's a side issue, Mike. We're talking about all the other businesses that are on their knees at this point and are saying that Boston is not recognizing the local issues that we have in Cape Cod and in Yarmouth in particular.
Yeah, I'm really torn. Mostly because, I would think that Eric was talking about the restaurants, and the restaurants would be part of that. So,
I mean, businesses is a collective term that applies to just about everybody that's in business. Motels, retail stops, shops, recreational activities.
There was some guidance out. I don't want to get too convoluted with it, but perhaps we could request an opening plan. I don't know. I'm just trying to find a way to have not a complete free-for-all, but to be able to find an avenue. Every time we have this conversation, it's within a week that, every time we say we don't want to, we'll wait and see what happens within the week. The reverse from the state happens. So I'm hopeful, but I think time is of the essence. So if we could work through something that everybody's comfortable with, I think that would be the best case scenario. I mean, we're really in the heart of the season now, and they only have a few weeks to make progress. So I'm really torn about this one. I do feel we should support our businesses, but to Mike's point, I think it might be, I'm just envisioning the hundreds of people in one place. And then, again, if it's, I don't know, if people don't feel comfortable going there, maybe they shouldn't go. But, what I would hate to do is have this happen and our numbers, we're down to one case. I'm not sure that
we don't have to be mother to everybody in the community.
Let people make choices.
That's right.
Cape-wide, we are at hundredths of a percent infected, thousandths of a percent have passed because of this. We are not Worcester or Boston or Springfield or New York or New Jersey. It comes down to choices. People who don't feel safe won't go out anyway. People who want to go out will be able to make that choice. As it exists right now, people don't have a choice. I'll give you a for instance. I have a client with a restaurant in Worcester. Just got his tent permit, 350-seat restaurant, got a tent permit for 80 seats. You can't survive on 25% of your occupancy. He's gone into his restaurants, removed some of his tables, created 6 feet of spacing between everything, provided shields between his booths. The Board of Health has come in and said, this is absolutely fantastic, and if it weren't for the state, I'd let you open right now. So why shouldn't a restaurant owner that's willing to take those precautions to ensure the safety of his customers the best that he's able, be able to make that choice and give his customers the choice? People don't have to go out to eat, but people should have the freedom to choose to do so.
Mr. Chairman, just one other question.
Go ahead.
Do we have a request from the Chamber of Commerce or leaders in the business community asking us to do something or take an action on something? Is there anything that we've been presented that maybe we haven't seen yet or had a chance to review or go over? I think on something of this magnitude, it'd be helpful to have at least some evidence or something in front of us, a set of recommendations or some guidance. I think if our business community was that worked up, I think that we'd at least hear from the Chamber of Commerce or some other. I mean, there are numerous business groups that represent businesses in Yarmouth. Have we heard from any of them? Restaurant Association or the Chamber of Commerce or any of them? Dan, Mike, I'll just put that question to you guys.
The only,
There's a charity event for Thursday morning, which is going to demonstrate just how irritated and fed up our business owners are with all this nonsense.
I'm sorry, I missed that, Eric. Could you repeat that?
I can explain.
I don't know if you heard, I think it's on our agenda for later, but there's a Tea Party event, I believe, being organized by the local business community to take place at Bass River Beach, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
On Thursday morning as a demonstration as to the extent of the frustration our business owners are feeling.
That's my understanding. It'll be at 10, again, it's going to come up in a little while, but 10 to 12 at Smuggler's Beach. There's a way it's been described to me. It's some of the business owners' version of the Boston Tea Party in protesting restrictions on the business. I received a call from Tom Murphy, the president of the Yarmouth Restaurant Association. And I talked to him about it and tried to give him some assistance in terms of what he had to do to get a permit. And I see that Tommy McCormick was the one actually that signed the permit, and we're gonna act on that tonight. But the permit says a ceremonial reenactment of Boston Tea Party. That's the only description that they give. My understanding is that the majority of the businesses are going to be Yarmouth businesses, but there's also going to be some business owners from Barnstable and Dennis, and perhaps other towns as well.
Can I just ask a question related to one comment you made, Mike?
Yes.
You know, I don't think the motion includes you know, when you said people putting up tents and stuff like that, I don't think that would be relief from a restriction placed on the businesses due to the COVID advisory. So I don't think that he's asking for anything more than what's licensed and allowed now. So, you know, in my mind, we're just asking them not to enforce the regulations. We're not saying that anybody can do anything more than what they are licensed to do. Am I correct by assuming that? I mean, that they can't expand, we're not taking away the things that we've already put in place as far as,
The whole outdoor restaurant thing was mandated by the state. They said you can't have dining indoors, but you can have dining outdoors under certain conditions. So that falls within one of the governor's directives.
okay. So the people that are licensed for
Is it a
that,
directive, an order, or a regulation? What is it?
I think it's a whatever term you give it, I think it's a mandatory provision.
Well, I think that's
Indoor
important.
restaurants have not been allowed to open yet throughout the state of Massachusetts.
I'm not sure that it's an order or it's something that's absolutely required.
I wouldn't be comfortable with allowing expansions of business without proper process.
Expansions of business?
The outdoor expansion of tents and things like that where public safety is involved. I think Mike's concern when he said that was that if we didn't enforce it, then they would be able to do that without any town, based on the motion, they would be able
I'm not suggesting unregulated expansions of outdoor premises. Okay. I'm suggesting letting the businesses open their doors.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that it's not an expansion of anything that's not licensed now. I mean, if they're licensed for it now, but they can't just willy-nilly, you're not saying let them do whatever they want. You're just saying let them, okay.
Let them conduct normal business operations to the extent that they feel that they are capable of doing safely.
Move the question.
Okay, we'll have a vote. Mark?
Nay.
Eric?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Norm?
Aye.
I vote nay. So it passes 3-2. Okay, Dan, you were going to speak briefly on the licensing of the outdoor restaurants.
Yeah, so as of today, we have approved 8 applicants for their alcohol extension to the outside. So we did 7 last week, as I notified you, and 1 today. So all applications that have been submitted in full have been acted on in very quick fashion.
Okay. Annual town meeting update.
So annual town meeting update, we had a walkthrough with various staff, the DY assistants and Pat Armstrong and Dan Horgan and Ken Muddy. We walked the site. The registration will be done in tents outdoors following some guidelines that are being set up for people's safety. The inside of the facility will be as you normally would see it, with the exception that we've allowed up to, I think it's about 80 or 85 seats available on the hardwood floor in the gym. So I'm thinking in the auditorium, gymnasium area, we're close to 200, maybe 225 persons. It depends how many family units come, because if you are a couple, you can sit next to each other. But we'll have enough staff available to accommodate all of that. So Thursday, we gather again at the site. The TV related activities will take place with technology. We need to set up a remote TV screen and audio at the cafeteria for overflow, and also get all the rest of the TV equipment available so that we can live stream it to YouTube and the webpage and Channel 18 all at the same time. So Thursday is a big day to set up a lot of that equipment. So we're in pretty good shape.
Okay. Department return to work plans.
So I asked the departments, first of all, town election, I have the safety plans coming up for, I'll probably have that for you in a memo format before the meeting at town meeting, but each election site, we have to have a safety plan in place. And the clerk staff is working on that, so I'll have that to you shortly. The golf, there's a golf update in there. I think Director Scott Gilmore was on the call. I'm not sure if he's still with us.
I don't see him, Dan.
Okay, so that being said, so he had indicated on his memo that he gave to you that the tee time restrictions have been lessened a little bit. So now they're at 70% capacity. He's reporting that play, particularly on the weekends, has been very active. The restaurant or the concession at Bayberry opened up over the weekend for outside type of meals on the go. We're having some challenges with staff as it relates to locating or rehiring staff for Bass River. So he wasn't comfortable getting that set up yet, but it'll be up soon. And then the driving range, of course, and practice facility operating, he's indicated. So I think the good news is, I don't have all the data yet, but golf is not looking for a subsidy from the general fund this year. So,
Say that again? I couldn't hear you.
golf is not looking for subsidy from the town general fund this year. So the financial performance was pretty solid, but also I think most significantly, some departure from normal practice, which was to put seasonal staff on layoff rather quickly at the end of the season, and delayed in bringing them back has saved a tremendous amount of money. So Scott's reporting that the financials for the upcoming year look pretty good. So
Dan, Scott is on the line if you want to ask him any questions.
there you go.
Yeah, Dan, thank you. Yeah, we're looking very good heading into the next fiscal year. We do not need any money to cover anything for FY20.
Scott, what's the interval between tee times now?
We're down to 12 minutes. So that effectively gave us one more group per hour. So we're at 5 tee times an hour, but that's still significantly less than what we were running before COVID. So we're at about 70% capacity. And I have no latest guidance on when that might get reduced. I haven't heard anything from Mass Golf or anybody at this point.
Anybody have anything for on golf before we move to the next topic?
I do have something. First of all, Scott, thanks for moving ahead on these things, and it's great to see things getting back incrementally to normal. And personal thanks for getting the range open.
No problem.
But I wanted to bring up, I've had some feedback in the last week or so from people in leagues who were concerned about their ability to operate their leagues this year. And I understand there was some discussion about that at the Enterprise Committee, and wondered if you have any further update at this point.
Yeah, so they couldn't come to agreement on last Wednesday. They met, they're meeting again tomorrow night. I think it's there's about 10 or 11 simple guidelines put in place to get them going. And I'm confident we can get them going by I think like July 14th or so, right after the 4th of July goes through, based on the tee sheet level and trying to return Yarmouth golf to normal. That's a big part of it. So one way or another, we'll get them up and running, and we'll get things going.
Okay, I'm not sure that's what they were hearing, but I think that's good news. You know, certainly the first 2 weeks of July were always a difficult period for the leagues in any case, in
Right.
terms of getting availability. So, and I understand the leagues are very interested because they've been put off by the whole COVID thing, and they kind of feel like it's the golf course's fault, and it's not. But nonetheless, they're anxious to get going. So,
Right, and we are very understanding that the leagues are a big part of it, and it's our intention definitely to get them up and running. Hopefully by that time, when we do get them up and when we have a tee time reduction interval, and we can accommodate some more people at the same time. But it was more a matter of working out the days and working out the plan to get them all to run efficiently at this point. So, but I talked to Dan a little bit on it, and I'm pretty confident we can get something off the ground by July 14th to get them up and going.
okay. Well, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if anybody else had any more questions for Scott.
I don't know if you mentioned it, Dan, but I just want to touch briefly that we're definitely in the final stages of the new POS system.
I did not have a chance to mention that.
Yeah, so we've gone through the process and selected club profits. Now we're just in the final agreement stage with them, and once we get that all signed up, we're going to try to get a early July install date, and we'll obviously run simultaneously with our current system until we feel confident enough to switch over completely. But it's a good step forward for our operation to push forward into the future here.
Does this new system have the marketing capabilities that we were, there was a lot of talk about TSNAP and the capabilities that system had, and does this other system have the capabilities that will allow us to reach out to members and past guests and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. It has everything that when we were looking at TSNAP, they have actually the same thing, if not better than what they were doing. So they have the social media part of it, the website, newsletters, the emails when people play, so we can thank them and stuff like that, and offer specials and stuff. They have a really great system, and it's come a long way, and it's mobile and desktop based, so we can effectively do best of both worlds there.
Okay, if you're projecting not quote unquote going live, but going in parallel, starting July 1st or so, I know things are always particularly with data processing projects, things are always a little bit difficult to project and to rely on in terms of schedules. But do you have any sense on what kind of personnel resource will be needed to support the system and to implement some of the capabilities, the marketing capabilities?
Yeah, a lot of that's on the timeline from Club Profit. We just haven't got to that step yet. And then once we do, I'll be happy to update you guys on where we stand there. But the significant need is just to get it in the door at this point, and then we'll kind of phase it in as we go, since we are in the middle of the season. But a lot of it is once Club Profit comes in the door, they'll work out all the kinks to where we feel confident to get up to the levels we want.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else for Kyle, or any other comments on golf update? Okay, we'll go to the next item, Dan.
Okay, so there should be a memo in your file related from Jeff Colby on playgrounds and bathroom facility openings. We're bringing on seasonal staff. It's been a little bit difficult. Some of them have found jobs already, but he'll be ready to have everything open by June 15th. So.
Okay, any questions or comments on that?
So do we need a motion?
No, we're just updating you. I don't, it's allowed to open under phase 2, and these are the steps that we needed to take care of to make sure that they could open up. So I just was apprising you that that's when it's going to open. We're on track.
So on the, are you gonna do these as separate items? Playground, library, and summer programs, or
This
just
is
all together?
so library curbside is a phase 2 operation. This is what Jane Kane's doing at the library. It's been popular to date. You know, obviously the big step for the library is going to be when you can open to the public inside the building. But for right now, we're working within the confines of the governor's instructions on phase 2 openings, and she tells me that the demand for library services is pretty significant. So
Great.
and then the last one is Amy Howell, the Assistant Recreation Director. She gave us a communication. As you know, camps were given an authorization to open up also. So she wanted to let you know that we're in full swing with registrations associated with that. So she put some information together. And I think all the families will be really pleased that we're going to have a camp event. I believe there's going to be a half-day option for a little bit more affordable.
They always have that option. They have a full day and a half day program.
So it's something that I think will be pretty popular. So,
But the numbers are going to be down because she says in here, we typically have welcome 300 kids a week, and we'll only have 80 kids in our full day program and 40 kids in our half day program.
yeah,
So
you have to have a limit. I think it's 2 staff members per 10 children. So
we've met with the Board of Health and have adjusted the program to comply with Mass state guidelines for day camps. And then she goes on to say that they will be running sailing, youth and adult tennis, youth and adult yoga on the beach, running club, Tai Chi, and karate. So getting back to the recreational programs, that's for sure. Isn't youth sports now allowed in phase 2, or am I wrong
yeah,
about
we haven't heard much from the youth sports groups, but they are now allowed in here in town. I haven't heard much activity associated with that, but I know like Babe Ruth leagues and little leagues across the state are all getting ready to open up. So,
All right. I guess we're ready to go on review of ATM warrant.
yeah, so this is the exercise annual that we go through. We're going to need to identify who would like to make the motions and read the explanations, and also whether or not the selectmen recommend a particular article or not.
Do we recommend on any of these?
Well, we never got to that point because we started down that road, but then COVID struck, and we decided to put it on hold because the budget was in flux.
So
So
we're
the
going to make
chairman always-
recommendations on this tonight, plus the assignments of the articles?
Yes.
All right.
I'll make the motion. We recommend all articles with the exception of the petitioned articles. Unless anybody wants to single out certain ones, perhaps it would be more efficient to do a blanket recommendation unless there are certain ones.
I think that's a good idea. I'll second that. So there's a motion and a second to recommend all articles except for the petitioned articles.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chairman. Are we envisioning the petitioned articles to be put off until the fall, all of them?
So as mentioned before, we've spoke to each of the petitioners, and what has to happen, because they did get the requisite signatures they needed, it had to appear on the warrant when it got published. So it did. We spoke to them individually. There'll need to be a motion made by somebody in town meeting to like indefinitely postpone the item. And then in order to avoid them the exercise of getting new signatures for the fall town meeting, it was recommended that the board just place those articles for them in recognition of that support in the fall.
So we can deal with the petitioned articles in the fall.
Yes, that is.
In terms of our own recommendations. It's not like we need to do anything on these.
No. You know, if everything goes the way it was supposed to go, and I've talked to Dan Horgan, and I know Mike and I were going to be meeting with Dan this Friday. The plan was to just simply move those when they come up on the warrant at town meeting, is to move those indefinitely, right?
Okay. I'm fine with that.
So that's, where did the petition article start? 23?
21, 22, 23.
21, yeah. So 1 through 20 is Eric's motion and my second. Does anybody want to pull anything out? If you don't, let's vote on the recommendation.
I've stated previously that I oppose the budget proposals that are currently on the board because I believe that we have not gone far enough with regard to other options that will not place us in a detrimental position with regard to capital expenditures in the future. We will have a very difficult time recovering from this and getting the capital expenditure proposals that are back into the budget on a consistent basis in the future. Secondly, we have not made any approach whatsoever with the school system or with the unions concerning the current budget situation. At a minimum, we should be talking about deferral of any wage increases that have been agreed to at this point, possibly for 2 or 3 years, in order to reduce the likelihood that we have to continually increase taxes. The current proposals involve a 2.5% increase in taxes. On top of that, every household of $300,000 is going to have another $130 of tax having to do with the new school system. You know, we're approaching a point where, in this environment, in a terrible environment, we are putting a crushing burden on our taxpayers. And we have not approached and not asked our town employees to support that in any way. I'm not talking about layoffs. I'm talking about deferral of negotiated increases in wages. And I don't think that's right. And if we're going to have a blanket vote, my vote is no.
Okay. Do you also vote no on the CPC articles, Norm?
The question is, will there be a vote on all the articles? And as I said, I will vote no on all the articles.
Okay. All right, let's put it to a vote then. Eric.
Aye.
Tracy.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Norm.
Nay.
I vote aye, so it passes 4-1.
I don't know how, in good conscience, this board can recommend a 2.5% tax increase on top of the school increase in that's coming along, and not approach our unions for reductions in wages. I just cannot imagine how we are putting ourselves in that position at this point and deferring all the capital expenditures that have previously been put into the levy. We're putting ourselves in an awful financial position and not doing everything we could do at this point.
All right. In terms of the assignment of the articles, does anybody have any preference or any recommendations?
Well, the operating budget goes to the chairman, so you're welcome.
So, okay.
We only have 20, so
I'll take any 4 you want to give me.
Any 4? Okay,
Well, Mike can do 1 through 4. Right?
okay.
And then, doesn't matter.
Yeah, just rotate them after that.
I'll
I'll
take 5 through 8.
6. Okay, there you go.
Take
I'll
5
take
through what? What did
Eric wants to take 5 through 8. He's offering to take 5 through 8. Eric is.
I'll do 9 through 12.
Oh, good. Well, CPA are not going to be offered.
What do you
Why?
mean?
I thought they were.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They are.
They'll do those.
Yeah, but we just need somebody to move them.
Right.
Okay.
I'll move the CPA articles.
And then Norm gets 18 through 20.
There you go, Norm.
Okay, fine.
Tom doesn't want any. He's against everything.
No, I'll speak up on the others, believe me.
I have no doubt about that. You didn't have to say that.
Thank you.
Okay, you got those assignments?
I do.
All right,
Read it. Yep.
good.
Good.
That's done. I thought it'd take longer than it did. Board and committee actions. Board of
Okay.
2 reappointments, Board of Registrars. 1.
Mr. Chairman, I'm recommending that the board reappoint 2 members to the Board of Assessors, Jay Sarijan and Joe Sullivan. I'm recommending their reappointment for 3-year terms expiring June 2023.
So moved.
I have a second.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay.
Okay, Eric's got it.
All those in favor, Mark,
Aye.
Norm,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's unanimous.
And the next item, Mr. Chairman, is I'm recommending reappointment of Robert Chapman as a regular member of the Yarmouth Board of Registrars for a 3-year term expiring the end of March 2023.
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
All those in favor, Norm,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That's unanimously approved. Also,
That concludes my report.
thank you, Mark. Projected 2020 agenda review. Let's remember that we do have to have a meeting on the 30th because of this matter we heard tonight in the drive-in. So hopefully we can keep it light.
So there'll also be a meeting at, a posted meeting for 5 o'clock on the 22nd.
Yes, okay. And then there's no meeting on the 7th because that's a holiday week, and then the next meeting will be July 14th. Where we have reorganization of the board, Board of Selectmen goals, tax classification hearing, and award of scholarships. You got anything else, Dan, you can think of you can put on for the 30th that isn't too laborious?
No, yeah, there might be something that might pop up that I might need to have some action on. It sometimes is the way it goes, but right now we have got our hands absolutely full with town meeting, business openings, the election. So we haven't had much of a time to think about anything but those things. So, but something might pop up. So I'm going to try to keep it though, just to the hearing.
All right, so hopefully we get everybody, but we'll need at least 3 people on the 30th to move forward with this entertainment license.
Yeah, that's correct.
It shouldn't take too long, I hope. And if there's any other matters, we'll talk about that, Dan. Maybe we can throw a few other things on there while we have the.
Yep, that's true. I do know there's a number of people that would like to come in and see you, but they prefer to do it in person. The airport, Katie Service wants to give an update on
Oh, good.
airport operations. I know the Cape Cod Commission, Christy Senatorial would like to come in front of you to update the board on that, and also Maggie Downey with the Cape Light Compact. And I'm thinking we'll start populating those in August on the meeting schedule, because we'll be in person by then, so.
Okay.
And we also have a public event. It's going to be, I believe, some kind of Zoom meeting for the MVP project. That's Workshop Road Solar and Battery Storage in Yarmouth Fire Station 3. And we just submitted the application for the construction grant for that activity. It went in on the 11th of June. So we have to, as part of the grant, we have to put on some sort of public event. It would normally be done at a selectmen's meeting, but due to scheduling, it'll be its own standalone Zoom meeting. So things are moving along on that front as well.
All right, does anybody else have anything on agenda items?
No.
We'll go to individual items. Tracy,
Nothing, thank you.
Eric,
I have nothing. Thank you.
Mark.
I just want to make a comment. Tracy sent us a message earlier today about a rescue involving highway department.
Yeah.
That there was a fairly significant accident in town, and I want to thank Tracy for letting the board know that at least sending us that clip. And I just kudos to the highway department for their being on the spot and attending to this very serious rescue. I think it was on Old Townhouse Road.
Yeah.
And kudos to them and for all the help by town employees in terms of rescuing these folks that were in a very, very serious situation. My understanding is the vehicle went up in flames, and it was could have been quite catastrophic had Yarmouth personnel not been on the scene. So kudos to everyone from the town of Yarmouth, Team Yarmouth, that responded, and we very much appreciate their being on the spot.
Thank you. Norm?
Nothing.
Okay. Let's go to the town administrator updates then.
I have that item from the Cape Cod Concerned Business Organization. Normally, if we had enough time and advance notice, this would appear on the consent agenda. They're asking for a parking fee waiver, although I understand the chairman has some additional information on that. But it's scheduled for June 18th, 10 to noon at Smugglers Beach. So I would just ask a vote to allow for this to occur on town.
Yeah, this is the Boston Tea Party we talked about before. Again, my understanding, from what I've been told, it's going to be mostly Yarmouth businesses, but some in Dennis and some in Barnstable and perhaps other places on the Cape. They don't want to pay parking fees, but indicated that if they had to pay, they would pay something. They don't want to pay the per car, charges. But if you impose the fee, it's reasonable, they would be amenable to that. But again, the request is to waive the fee.
This is the regular beach parking fee they're asking for a waiver on?
Yes, because they want to get into Smugglers Beach and have their ceremonial tea party, I guess, on the river.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the application.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote on that. Mark?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Norm?
Aye.
I vote aye as well, so that passes unanimously. Water resource planning, is there anything on that, Dan?
Yeah, there's, we're kind of like on a hiatus here as it stands with particularly with our partner in Harwich. So we're going to, on the warrant, we have an article that would request borrowing authorization, not that we would borrow it, but the potential authorization such that if the Route 28 DOT project goes forward, that we'd be able to access some funds to participate and drop potential wastewater lines in the ground. I am a little bit concerned with state revenues being way off and more likely the federal government up to its eyeballs in red ink, that a lot of the, what I'd call the tip related projects that DOT was lining up for us might end up getting pushed out a little bit. And, you know, the fact that they're milling such a significant portion of Route 28 right now makes me wonder that perhaps they know something at Mass Highway that we don't know, that maybe they had a little extra money this year and let's get it on 28 because maybe we're going to push those projects out. So it wouldn't surprise me if we're kind of stuck for a few years longer than we thought on that Route 28 project. But right now, you know, this, until we can get our partner in Harwich back into the ball game on this, it's going to be a challenge for us. So we'll get back together with the team in July. I think, Mr. Forrest, that's what we're kind of recommending at this point.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
All I got.
Anybody have anything else? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, Norm,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you, everybody. And thanks again to Kyle Pedicini and Master Control doing another great job.